dotted around the area. One's draped in the stars and stripes.
And these guys are fantastic. These musicians, they're really good.
Mitch takes us to a bar on the main street. We sit out the back of the bar in a leafy courtyard. How do you think this community's been affected in the last few months, 6 months or so, by the increase in enforcement around immigration?
Many of the Cuban and Cuban-American people of South Florida were very supportive of the Trump administration coming in a second time. And what I am hearing for the first time in my life is people expressing deep regret.
Can you understand why, if people see reports of crimes, sometimes violent crimes, and they're committed by people who are not US citizens, why they would think that it's not fair for you to come to this country and then commit crimes, that you're making this country unsafe?
I would ask them, do they understand that the greatest perpetrators of domestic terrorism in the United States are white American men? So should we go around detaining them preemptively?
But if somebody is from the US, that is a different calculation, isn't it, than someone who has come to a country and then commits a crime?
Well, who's from the US, right? What does that mean?
Someone who was born here, someone who has US citizenship.
What I see is that people don't actually care about the citizenship status. I think it's racial. I'm sorry, but that's not really who's getting in detention, is it? It's not sort of all foreign-born people, or else the demographics of who's in detention would look a lot different.
Hey.
Hello. Hi, how are you? London, I called Mitch to get an update on his client, Michael. So how is Michael? Is he still in Alligator Alcatraz?
No, he was taken from Alligator Alcatraz late night on
Shortly
August
after
3rd.
our visit, Michael was moved out of Alligator Alcatraz to another nearby detention centre.
I saw him literally the morning of. I was able to see him in person at that facility.
Right, so
I didn't have to
super quick.
email anyone. Right, exactly. That's my point. You all saw what the runaround that I got when you were with me. I didn't have to do any of that. All I had to do was show up with my credentials, and I was able to see him that same morning that he was out of that place.
And how was he?
He was awful. He's had more bleeding. You know, he had colon surgery now. It's been over a month.
And he's still bleeding.
And he's still bleeding, yeah.
I have spoken to one lawyer who managed to visit her client inside Alligator Alcatraz, but she told me that there were guards and contractors in the room with her during the interview, and a camera. The lawsuit that Mitch's organisation is part of, claiming that lawyers don't have sufficient access to the centre, is still ongoing as we record. There's also a second lawsuit against the facility. It claims that the government didn't do an environmental impact analysis before construction, which environmentalists say is required by law. And then last week, a judge ruled that much of the facility must be dismantled and no new migrants taken there. It's a preliminary ruling and the case will continue to be litigated. The Florida state government has already filed an appeal. How are you feeling now about your work in Florida in the immigration system?
I'm still feeling very heartbroken to see what's happening in my hometown, in my community, but I'm also feeling really energized. People are not going to let this go down.
But even as lawsuits threaten Alligator Alcatraz, this facility may turn out to be the first of many. The Florida state government already has plans to open another brand new immigrant detention centre to, quote, build on the success of Alligator Alcatraz. It's got another alliterative name. It's called Deportation Depot.
That was Assignment from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho, and this is CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg. Thanks for joining us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, on YouTube. Lots of places to find us, but you could be anywhere. So thanks for being here with us on CBC. Going to be hot today, everybody, in Winnipeg. We've got a high today of 28 degrees with Humidex going to feel like 32. Brandon, it's going to feel like 34. And up in Thompson, sunny, and it will be a high of 25 degrees. And with Humidex, 29. So really warm across the whole province. The show's on air till 8:37 this morning. If you have any issues on your commute, you're going to call Corey Funk. We hope you do anyway. 788-3093 is where you can do that. Good morning, Corey. Corey directs the show. Good morning, Abby Adeyemi, who is behind the controls of the program, our senior tech. Abby will be covering weather on the air, so we'll talk to him on air after 6. And Mr. Azika Abdelatif is back behind the controls of YouTube this morning, our producer there. So if you're watching, make sure you say hello in the chat. All right, let's get to it. It is time to check in with what's happening in news. And in our CBC Manitoba News Department, here's Heather Wells with your news headlines.
Good morning. Well, back to school could look a little different for some students next week. The province says more than 5,500 people are still displaced by wildfires, and about 400 students across the province need a place to learn. Planning is underway to make sure student evacuees can go to school where they are. So we'll hear more about that through the morning. And Manitoba's Advocate for Children and Youth says there is an urgent need for emergency placements for children in care in the north. Sherry Gott says she would like to see the Families Minister visit some of the northern communities to see challenges they face caring for children, particularly those who have special needs. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
So we'll talk to Heather throughout the morning. Next full newscast, as she mentioned, is at 6:30. On our program today, we will get increasing reaction, as mentioned, to the investigation into the fatal police shooting of Afolabi Stephen Opaso. We're going to hear from a former police chief on the decision and where the Winnipeg Police Service will go from here after the decision, now that we have heard about it. So stay tuned. That's coming up with some analysis. Also, in the first hour of the program, we are going to talk more about gun control in the States. It's a national conversation. It's constantly revisited in the U.S. It's front and center again after that terrible shooting at the elementary school in Minneapolis yesterday. So stay tuned. That's all still ahead. World Report's next.
Today on Q.
The Canadian musician Melanie Fiona rose to stardom in the early 2000s because of her powerful voice. Then she lost her voice, literally and figuratively. After a decade-long break from music, Melanie will be here to tell you why she's back.
No more fighting.
Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Smoke from wildfires is undermining the health of Canadians. 2023 was the worst wildfire season ever recorded here. Now, a report from the University of Chicago says it led to some of the highest particulate pollution levels in more than 25 years. As science reporter Nicole Mortellaro tells us, experts fear it is reversing progress made in achieving cleaner air.
It's hard not to remember the 2023 wildfire season, when more than 16 million hectares of forest were lost and thousands were displaced from their homes. Today's report found that during the 2023 wildfire season, more than half of Canadians breathed air that surpassed our national standard. And if those levels continued for a person's lifetime, the average Canadian would lose roughly 2 years of their life expectancy. The worsening air quality is a frustrating reversal of progress made by Canada to reduce air pollution. Michael Greenstone is one of the report's authors.
What's really interesting about the reversals in Canada and the United States is they're showing that air pollution is like the zombie that we thought we had killed, but it's coming back to life.
But with climate change worsening droughts, the risk of wildfires increases, as does the risk to Canadians. Courtney Howard, an emergency room doctor in Yellowknife, said we could continue to see an increase in health effects such as asthma, pneumonia, or even cardiac arrest.
I started looking into wildfire smoke in about 2014 because we had 2.5 months of wildfire smoke in Yellowknife. And I wanted to know, just as an emergency physician, what that did to our patient population. We had a full doubling of emergency department visits due to asthma to our emergency department and a 50% increase in pneumonia.
This year has been the second worst wildfire season on record, and experts warn that the risk to Canadians from exposure to smoke will likely increase each year. Nicole Mortellaro, CBC News, Toronto.
A heavy Russian bombardment overnight has killed at least 15 people in Kyiv, including 4 children. Dozens more have been injured. Ukrainian officials say the capital was targeted with more than 30 missiles and nearly 600 drones. Bar Stewart has more from Kyiv.
One by one, rescue crews carry away the dead on stretchers from a 5-story apartment building in Kyiv. A Russian missile slammed into it in the middle of the night, causing several floors to collapse.
It was like several rocket attacks.
Andrei Luti lived in the building and told CBC News that he and others ran to the shelter when they started to hear explosions. 1 minute after he reached it, the missile struck the building. When the shelter filled with smoke, he said some residents ran out to the street, but then a second missile hit a few dozen meters away.
I was so shocked, but I very happy my mind tell me the right stuff what to do. It's like adrenaline stuff, I don't know.
Officials say 20 districts were hit in the city in the overnight attack. The president of the European Council said an office in Kyiv that belongs to the EU delegation to Ukraine was damaged in a deliberate Russian strike. Images showed the inside of the building strewn with ceiling tiles and other debris. This was the largest attack in the capital since the end of July, and the deadliest one involving civilians since U.S. President Donald Trump met with Russia's president for a summit earlier this month. Today, Ukraine's leader Volodymyr Zelensky said that Vladimir Putin is choosing ballistic missiles rather than the negotiating table. And he said several deadlines and dozens of opportunities for diplomacy have already been wasted. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Kyiv.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is traveling to Japan and China, looking to build closer diplomatic ties. New Delhi is battling escalating tariffs from U.S. President Donald Trump. Additional tariffs of up to 50% on Indian exports went into effect yesterday. Modi visits Japan first. That country reached a broad tariff deal with the U.S. last month, but the details of a key investment package offered by Tokyo are still unclear. Modi then travels to China. He is expected to meet both Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin for two-way talks. Putin plans to be in Beijing to attend a military parade. The White House says it
targeted for standing up to science.
What you saw at the CDC.
Targeted for standing up to science.
What you saw at the CDC was a wholesale destruction of the leadership of the organization.
Dr. Ashish Jha was the COVID-19 response coordinator during the Biden administration. Along with the attempt to remove Maneras, 4 other high-ranking CDC officials resigned late Wednesday, one of them accusing the Trump administration of weaponizing public health. Dr. Jha agrees.
It is an extraordinary moment, and as I said, one that leaves our country very vulnerable to biological threats.
More criticism came from California Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna.
The entire scientific community is outraged by this. She's just standing up for that, and she's being fired. I mean, you have an administration that basically has made a habit of rejecting all forms of knowledge and expertise.
All this comes as the Kennedy-influenced Food and Drug Administration announced on Wednesday restrictive guidelines on who is eligible to get the latest COVID-19 vaccines this fall. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
Musicians play at a candlelight vigil last night for victims of the school shooting at a Minneapolis Catholic school. 2 children were killed and 17 other people were wounded when an attacker opened fire. The students were attending Mass in a nearby church to mark the start of the school year. Officials say all of those wounded are expected to recover. The FBI is investigating the attack as an anti-Catholic hate crime. 7 deportees from the U.S. are now in Rwanda, part of an agreement between the United States and the East African country. Non-citizens are being sent to Rwanda and other countries. This is part of U.S. President Donald Trump's mass deportation plan. Rwanda is one of 4 African countries that has reached agreements with Washington. The others are Uganda, Eswatini, and South Sudan. No information was provided about the identities of the deportees sent to Rwanda. Officials there say some have expressed the desire to stay, while others want to return to their home countries. Canada's top court will today weigh in on a land dispute. It involves a First Nations claim to a stretch of beachfront on the shores of Lake Huron. The claim by the Saugeen First Nation has been supported by a ruling upheld last year by Ontario's Superior Court. As Andrew Lupton tells us, the town and landowners are now asking the Supreme Court of Canada to step in.
There is some confusion and frustration.
All summer long, Jay Kirkland has fielded the same question.
over and over. Does Sauble Beach, the Lake Huron town that's been drawing tourists to its sandy shores for decades, even still exist?
It was just a kind of a shock to our municipality and the town of Sauble Beach when it did happen.
Kirkland is the mayor of South Bruce Peninsula, the municipality that includes the town of Sauble Beach. Over the Canada Day long weekend, the town's iconic retro-styled welcome sign was switched overnight. Instead of saying welcome to Sauble Beach, it now reads welcome to Saugeen Beach. The sudden sign swap happened after a series of court decisions. They ruled that a survey mistake made back in 1855 deprived the band of land ceded to them in a treaty with the Crown. Now property owned by the town and a handful of landowners is in limbo. The town is asking the Supreme Court of Canada to hear its appeal to reverse those decisions. Kirkland said it's to clear up confusion.
I think there's other cases that are going to pop up from this in the future.
Lawyer Nuri Frame doesn't see it that way. He's representing the First Nation. Frame says the case is about how language of a single treaty is interpreted and doesn't have wider implications for other land disputes involving First Nations.
So this is, to be very clear, not a case about Aboriginal title. It is not a land claim. It is rather a case which is about ensuring that the treaty boundaries that were expressly agreed to in 1854 are reflected on the ground.
The Supreme Court's decision on whether or not they'll hear the appeal is expected this morning. Andrew Lupton, CBC News, London, Ontario.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report News Anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for spending some time with us here on Information Radio. My name is Marcy Marcusa, and this is CBC's Morning Show. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. Going to be very hot today. We'll get into that detail for you in just a moment as we get ready, right? Next week at this time, most kids are going to be in class. This hour on the program, we are going to be talking about some issues in downtown Winnipeg. In the past, his store would get about 300 customers a day, but now he says he's lucky if he gets 80. He says it's thanks to the new transit system. We're going to hear from a business owner about why he believes the transit overhaul in our city has been bad for business overall. And we'll also hear what he would like to change moving forward. So stay tuned for that. Also, we will talk to a former Canadian trade advisor about the Prime Minister's trip to Europe. Among other topics, of course, he was discussing possible new trade opportunities. So what could those mean for Canada and for Manitoba? Stay tuned. And kids returning to school, as I mentioned, next week. Everybody's mostly going to be in by the end of next week. What about AI tools when it comes to school? This hour, Dr. Raj Bhardwaj is actually looking at a study hinting that AI tools, artificial intelligence, may not be great for brain development. So stay tuned. We're going to hear that from Dr. Bhardwaj coming up. Right now, Heather Wells, though, is here with our daily news headlines out of Manitoba. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, schools in Manitoba are making room for hundreds of wildfire evacuees who won't be home for the start of class. More than 5,500 people are still displaced by wildfires, and the government's been asking evacuees to register their children in local schools. Winnipeg School Division Superintendent Matt Henderson estimates up to 400 students across the province will need a place to learn. An investigation into a Winnipeg police shooting that killed a Nigerian international student has found the officers' actions were justified. Cash Heed, a former police chief in Vancouver, says we need new strategies for police when dealing with people in crisis. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 6:30.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Cash Heed, by the way, will be our guest this morning, so we'll have an opportunity also to have a full interview with him coming up after 8 o'clock on that story. Right now, let's plug you into the day. So that means, what are you going to wear today? Or maybe what are you going to do today if you still have some summer left? What I love at this time of year, and I hope Izzy can get a shot up of Abby on the split screen here, because at the end of August, Abby always does this. He starts pulling out the shirts that hang on to summer.
It's more like hanging on to summer.
What are you wearing today? Describe your shirt.
Well, it's sky blue, and I've got some coconut trees on there. Just still feeling like I'm in the tropical part of the world.
I love it. It's making me happy. Yesterday, we didn't get a chance to talk about your shirt. It was white. It also had summery stuff all over it.
Yeah, some palm trees on
Palm
that
trees
tree.
was yesterday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, there were some palm trees today, coconut trees.
It's highly enjoyable, Abby.
Holding on to summer.
Yeah, I like it. I feel like I should be matching you. Maybe tomorrow I'll try to find something summery.
I'll send a memo.
Yeah, well, you're dressed correctly today. It's going to be hot.
Yes, it's going to be hot. A sunny one. We're going to see bright skies across the province today, though we're waking up to foggy conditions across board from the north all the way down south. We're seeing foggy conditions in most of the regions, but the main concern today is the humidity. It's going to be warm, it's going to be sunny, and we might feel some mild temperatures in between. Right now, Winnipeg, we are at 16 degrees. You will notice shallow fog in low-lying areas and around the city. That's still going to linger into the morning, but that should lift as you get towards the afternoon period. That will give way to lots of sunshine. We'll see temperatures quickly rising to a warm 28 by the afternoon period, and with the humidity factored in, it's going to feel close to 32 degrees. The winds will stay light from the south, and it might just keep things a bit. In the southern part of the province, we're seeing 12 to 16 degrees. Also, foggy conditions being felt all the way down to the Interlake region and to the Westman region of the province this morning. Temperatures will warm up to 28 in some areas and 30 degrees in some parts of the south, while up north we're seeing fog patches also there. Churchill is actually at 7 degrees right now. Winnipeg, we are at 16, warming up to 28.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey, you're repping with your hat with the summer attire, I guess, here.
Yes, that's right. You got to keep those summer vibes going, but I also have a sweater on too. So
Nice. So you're feeling the season.
Yes.
Corey's hat, by the way, if you're not watching on YouTube, is covered in beautiful florals, and it's locally made, I think.
Yeah,
right?
it's an old hat
Okay.
named by Nathan Dewick, and he makes a lot of old hats. If you ever go to Folk Fest, he's there.
Yeah, Old Hat Company.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. It's lovely. All right, let's get into the morning commute. I guess just remind people where they can reach you, right?
Yes. Yeah, you give me it's very quiet out there, but if it's not where you are, you can give me a call, 204-788-3093.
Let's get into this story about some of the transit concerns. For the last decade, Tefere Kasai has been the owner of Graham Convenience Store. It is located on the corner of Graham and Vaughan. It's next to the old Hudson Bay store. Still feels weird saying that, but yeah, the old shuttered Hudson Bay. His convenience store used to be surrounded by bus stops. Now, in June, when the city revamped transit routes, as you recall, that all changed because that's the pedestrian corridor now. So Kasai says that his business is suffering as a result. Just a few months ago, his store was seeing, as I mentioned, around 300 people a day, he says. And now he says he's lucky if he gets 80 customers in a day. He explained more about his concerns to the CBC's Zubina Ahmed.
My business is from the buses, and there is no bus here, so it's affect my business like by 85%. So pretty much we open for 12 hours, but no customers.
And this has happened since the changes in the bus route?
Yes, from the change of bus. Before that, we have a good business, a lot of walking, a lot of bus shelter people they come in. But right now, with the change of the buses, our business is very slow down. Yeah.
Since the bus routes have changed, who comes by? Like very few people?
No, we don't have nobody's come here. Just we have from the base the people that working for construction. I work only for them, and these people they come on twice. One in the morning, one the lunchtime, and one 3 o'clock. When these people they gone, we don't have nobody. Pretty much I work for the construction people only.
85% loss. Like how are you managing it?
Pretty much, you know what, right now we don't do a lot of grocery. We cut everything. We cut hours for my people that work with me because we don't have that. Pretty much I work the whole hours by myself just to pay for the bills. That only affect us. No, so now I don't know what to do. Maybe I'm looking maybe for the better place.
So are you planning to look to change locations?
If possible, if I get some convenience store, yes, yeah. Because I can do for 2 years ago. I expanded that house. I don't know that the bus lines change. So now I pay double what I get before. Before, if you see from this one, it's only a small one. So I double it. I say that to grow the business. But now, with the situation with the bus change, see the streets, nobody pass. So I don't know what to do. We're looking for something different.
And have you spoken to the government or the city, told them your problems?
No, right now, because I can't do anything, because not only me, they affect all for all of us, these people. So I will talk together. I talk with the owner of this one, if he give me a little discount for the rent. Until now, I'm still waiting for him, what he say, but if continue like this one, I can't do it, this business. I can't, hard for me. Yeah. Because we work 3 people now, plus we work 2 people now.
Oh,
they cut hours.
3 and now 2.
Now 2. And the one is just only for a part-time job.
Okay, and would you like to see any changes if something happens?
Should, definitely, yes. Just I'm looking for change. I need something, the government to do something, city to do something. I don't know what to say about that. So look forward, things to be changed. Hopefully to be back in the buses.
Yeah, are you hoping for that?
Yes, that's why I pray for that. Okay. Because I love this business. Good corner, nice business. I met a lot of friends in 10 years. So now I lose all my customers.
What a challenge for that business owner who had been on one of the busier areas for bus routes in Winnipeg in that Graham downtown part under the Old Bay, around the Old Bay. And now, of course, it's a pedestrian corridor because of changes. So the city transit stops have all changed. That was CBC's Zubina Ahmed in conversation with that business owner, Graham convenience store owner Tefere Kasai. If you want to read more about the bus changes and also how they're affecting businesses all over the city and customers, you can see a series of stories on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba. It is right now 6:19 on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. And a bit of music next. This is from Haley Wallace, who hails from the Kitsaso Heihei Nation in BC and has a really powerful voice that she says stems from being a performer early on in her life. Here she is to blow us away this morning. This is her tune with Jeremy Parkin. It's called Solo on CBC.
I'm just trying to feel that touch. You can leave me out of love. Be easy, there's no rush. Prove you want this more than once. Ain't gotta say too much. All that such and such. Let's get lost in love. I'm not into playing house. Boy, you better lay it down low. If you wanna stay around. You really have some
Kind of shades of Kelly Bado in her voice there, right? Just thinking about our local artist here. That is, though, Haley Wallace, who hails from BC. If you want to check that out, that's her song called Solo, and it's with Jeremy Parkin. It is 6:23 a.m. on CBC, easing you into your Thursday morning. Thanks for being with us. We've got fog pretty much across most of the province. There's shallow fog in Winnipeg, fog patches up in Thompson. Currently in the city, we're 16 degrees. Well, as you know, Canada has been addressing trade instability on two fronts this week, one in Washington and the other overseas. So Prime Minister Mark Carney visited several European countries, and among the topics of discussion was future trade. Joining us to talk about where those opportunities are for Canada is Julian Karagassian, who's a former special advisor in the International Trade and Finance branch at the Department of Finance. He's also a visiting lecturer at McGill University's Department of Economics. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what do you think are the most promising areas of trade expansion with Europe that were highlighted on this trip?
I mean, potentially we have the opportunity to expand trade right across the board. We sell each other everything from airplanes to nuclear reactors to foodstuffs. I think the biggest area, just to answer your question, would be energy, and in particular natural gas and oil. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One country in particular in the EU, the biggest economy by far, Germany, has very little energy of its own. It was heavily reliant on Russian natural gas and oil, and a lot of that has been cut off with the war. And so there's really immense potential to expand our energy sales, natural gas, oil, by ship to Germany and to Europe more generally. But it's not going to happen overnight. And the second area is critical minerals.
So before I ask you about critical minerals, which our province here, Manitoba, is acutely interested in and positioned to be interested in, I want to ask you about servicing Germany and other parts of Europe. Can Canada do that with our current output, or are we talking about, is this reliant on the pipeline projects that Mark Carney's talking about?
It's going to be reliant on the pipeline projects that could be built into the Energy East partnership, but we are going to need, and we're going to have to move quickly. We are going to need infrastructure, not only an extension of our pipeline network, but also an extension of our road and rail networks, pretty much the entire transportation sector. And if we include pipelines in transportation, because it's moving energy, then and also the points of exit and entry for our countries, marine, and those are going to be critical. We have to build up. Prime Minister Carney's been talking about building out our economy in addition to these nation building projects. They're one and the same thing. We need new port facilities, and we need much more investment in existing port and other transportation infrastructure. And that does need to happen. We can do marginal increases in our energy and other exports with existing infrastructure, but for a large scale expansion, we're going to need a very big range of these capital projects in our ports, in our rail, in our airports, in our road, and also in natural gas storage.
And Churchill obviously is on the table here for our port in Manitoba, and minerals is obviously one of the things that we're talking about there. When you look at supplying Europe, just to stay with the mineral component here, why would they want our export of minerals now? Is it a new market for them, or to expand it, or where are they getting that serviced right now? Or from right now, I guess.
China produces about 80% of the world's critical minerals. They could actually do more. And then other countries, Australia, Brazil, Russia. But there's a huge the outlook is what's interesting here, and the outlook for the demand for critical minerals when we think of the rise of artificial intelligence and the digitalization of the world, and the fact that everybody has an iPhone or a Samsung, and the coming green the green transition that we're in with electric vehicles. Critical minerals are used in all of these critical products, these key products. And so it's not so much a question of competing with China, is more feeding a growing global market. And really it's up to us. We can make the investments in these critical minerals, and we need the infrastructure to go along with it to be able to move them, because very weight intensive, these critical minerals. And we also need the processing facilities. And we could do that right there in Manitoba. We could have processing facilities where we not only mine these critical minerals, but we process them and ship them, and we get more value that stays in the family, that stays in Manitoba, stays in Canada.
I want to ask you about taking advantage of some of this because Canada, as you know, has we have many free trade agreements all around the world, covering 52 countries. There's billions of consumers. Many of them are right now not being utilized to a great degree. What do you think should be done and could be done to encourage more Canadian businesses to access those markets?
Well, I mean, one thing that could be done is like it's great to have a free trade agreement with Korea. We have a lot. We have some trade with Korea. We have a few $1 billion worth. We could do a lot more. But one of the problems is we need a lot of our trade corridors, if we can put it that way, run north-south. Now, we do have points of entry and exit on the Pacific coast, on the Atlantic coast, and in your province in Manitoba with Churchill Falls. But we need to build out our marine infrastructure. It's really critical, and I think the Prime Minister's recognized this. And we need the transportation infrastructure not only to be modernized, but extended. We need to build out these networks, road, rail, air, to be able to go to our coasts, to be able to support more exports. And really, one of the critical markets with whom we don't have a free trade agreement with is China, which is, they produce 1/3 of the world's manufacturing output, and they could take, I mean, we could really see a doubling or a tripling in a decade of trade with China, particularly from our Western provinces. And I'll just add this point. I think our Western provinces need a greater say in our foreign policy because they're suffering right now with Chinese tariffs on canola because we have tariffs on electric vehicles. And so the potential for trade with Asia and also with Europe, I think is immense.
Thank you very much for outlining some of the highlights and opportunities moving forward. We appreciate having you on CBC with us.
Thank you for having me.
That is live with us via Zoom. Julian Kargesian, a visiting lecturer at McGill University's Department of Economics, talking more about what was coming out of the Prime Minister's meeting in Europe. Business news still ahead. Stay with us. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is 16 degrees. That August heat continues as the month winds down. Sunny in Winnipeg today, a high of 28. The Humidex, though, 32 this afternoon. It is back to school next week, but many students are still under wildfire evacuation orders. School administrators are racing to have a plan in place to help them return to class on time. CBC's Santiago Arias Orozco reports.
We weren't, expecting to be gone until September.
Irving Bigetti's family spent much of the summer displaced from northern Manitoba. The wildfires that forced him out have receded, but like many others, Bigetti's family won't be back home for the start of the school year. More than 5,500 people are still evacuated in Manitoba. The government doesn't want students out of class coming the first bell next week, so parents can register them in local schools where they are evacuated. Matt Henderson is a Winnipeg School Division superintendent.
There are probably families who don't trust the school system in Winnipeg, and we want to make sure that we're doing it in a culturally responsive way.
Staff, including Indigenous knowledge keepers, are helping families. The Brandon School Division is prepared to welcome as many as 250 evacuees. Many evacuated communities are waiting for electricity to be restored. For some, that might not happen until the end of September. Santiago Arias Orozco, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A use of force expert says police need to change how they deal with people in crisis. This after an investigation into a Winnipeg police shooting that claimed the life of 19-year-old Afolabi Opaso in 2023. The report by the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team says Opaso was in a mental health crisis and ran at officers with 2 knives before being shot. The investigation concludes the officer's actions were justified. Cash Heed is a former chief of police in Vancouver and an expert on use of force. He says we need to update protocols around dealing with vulnerable people.
The frequency of having contact with people that are in this mental state is increasing for law enforcement officials. but we default to the same response, and that is armed police officers responding, trying to quell the situation.
He says changes to policy would require action from the provincial government as well as local police leaders. Manitoba's advocate for children and youth says there is an urgent need for emergency placements for children in care in the north. Sherry Gott says some high-needs children are being moved up to 10 times. Gott says the situation has not improved even after the province's shift to decolonize the child welfare system.
There needs to be placements in the communities. You know, the minister continues to say that children need to stay with their families. That's fine, but let's resource the communities that need them.
Gott says it is a revolving door of frustrated social workers in the north. She says they need to be paid more. She says the government should recruit more skilled staff to help with community placements. And she says the families minister should visit some of the northern communities to see the challenges they face caring for children, particularly those with special needs. CBC has reached out to the minister's office for comment. Honoring victims of a deadly school shooting. Multiple vigils were held in Minneapolis last night. 2 children, ages 8 and 10, were killed at a Catholic school. Another 17 people were wounded.
Don't let anybody tell you that it's not about guns, because it is.
Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry calling for stricter gun control laws in the U.S. It is a sentiment shared by other Democratic politicians, including Peggy Flanagan, the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota.
God weeps. Jesus weeps in this moment because we have free will and we have been given all of the tools necessary to stop this violence against our children.
Investigators say the shooter was 23-year-old Robin Westman, who died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. To Ukraine, where an overnight drone and missile attack on central Kyiv has killed at least 15 people. It's believed at least 3 children are among the dead. As many as 100 buildings have been damaged in the bombardment, including a kindergarten and a shopping mall. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Operation Red Nose won't be leading the way home for partygoers in Thompson this holiday season. The group sharing on social media they don't have enough volunteers in the northern city. Rob Jansen at Safety Services Manitoba believes part of the reason Operation Red Nose is affected is because more people are aware of dangers around impaired driving.
For sure, we have strengthening public awareness about the dangers and risks of impaired driving, and people being responsible with designated drivers is something that's really grown in the community.
Thompson isn't the only city losing Operation Red Nose this year. Jansen confirms the service won't run in Brandon or Shiloh. You can hear more on this story coming up on CBC's Radio Noon after the 12 o'clock news. And you can find more Manitoba news, as always, at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather Wells, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get into the weather now. It's regional forecast time on this hot day with Abby.
Yeah, hot. Another warm, sunny, and muggy day across the province this morning. Fog patches actually clearing, and that will leave way for some clear skies and late summer heat. 16 degrees in Winnipeg right now. Brandon, Dauphin, Gimli, all the way down to our surrounding communities. We're seeing temperatures close to 15, 16 degrees. Up north, we're seeing 13 degrees around the powerful influence. Thompson, Churchill hovering around 6 and 7 degrees. It's more about the fog patches this morning, and then we'll see lots of sunshine today.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
And the fog patches, we're not getting calls yet on traffic.
No, haven't got any calls yet about those fog patches, where exactly they're impacting people's commute. But if they are, though, you can give me a call. I haven't heard of any other major issues out there. But the commuter line number for you to call is 204-788-3093.
All right, Cray Fung, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to our team here in Information Radio on CBC. And next on the show, a new member of our team, filling in for Christely Ramlakan. Hallie Cottenham is here with our business news this morning. Hi there, Hallie.
Hey, Marcy. Great to hear you.
Yeah, nice to see you on Zoom, too, here.
Oh, right.
So NVIDIA, let's start there. A big computer chip company. People might know the name. They just posted earnings that matched predictions. Why did its stock price drop?
That's because investors expected some sensational results, and what they got was good results, okay? So NVIDIA, the world's most valuable company, something like $4.4 trillion, it posted revenues of $47 billion, that's with a B, in the July quarter, which was up 56% versus last year, and its profits were up 60% in the same period. But you're right, the stock price dropped overnight more than 3%, and that's because the net growth for the quarter was less than half of what the company posted for the same period in 2024. In other words, some investors are seeing NVIDIA as not speeding up but slowing down. And this could be a real problem for the NASDAQ because NVIDIA alone makes up 11% of the NASDAQ value. So this morning we'll see whether NVIDIA's drop is going to bring down the overall index.
Let's go to another story here. This one listeners might remember from Manitoba because last week we had a story with a business owner named Leah Bauer. She's the owner of something called Apothecary. It's an artisan goat milk soap company based in southeast Manitoba, so a small business. But for years, she served American shoppers through her website. But now there's this impending removal of something called the de minimis rule. So what she's going to do, and what she actually did, is close shopping to all buyers from the States. She's not happy about it, but she said it was necessary because of her bottom line. So remind us again, Hallie, what the de minimis rule is and also about a potential solution to this.
Yeah, so de minimis is this tariff exemption, and you're right, it's going to be eliminated as of tomorrow. And just sort of as background, it allowed shipments of goods worth $800 or less to enter the U.S. duty-free. Now, the Trump administration is attempting to slow down the flow of low-cost imports. The idea is to benefit domestic manufacturers. So it's sort of getting rid of this loophole. It's really causing havoc to postal networks and e-commerce like the one that you just mentioned. Morning shows across the country are talking to local people who are going to be affected by this. Dozens of countries have suspended some partial shipments over this. For example, the International Postal Service, DHL, stopped accepting shipments to the U.S. Earlier this week. Canada Post, though, this is good news for lots of our listeners. Canada Post says it has a solution. It's going to bring in a third-party tech provider called Zonos to help ensure that shipments, quote, continue moving smoothly across the border. Zonos is going to collect the duties and remit them directly to U.S. Customs. For most goods, the duty is going to mean that 35% tariff imposed on Canada by U.S. President Donald Trump, assuming that their particular goods are not covered under the CUSMA deal.
We'll have to follow up then with some of those business owners, as you said, not just here in Manitoba, but across the country and see, if that's a solution that'll work for them or could be a bit of a bright spot. Spotify.
Yes, except if they have to pay the 35% duty on it, right?
Yes, there is that. Depends what their bottom line is. Spotify, before we look at the numbers this morning, they're adding what it hopes will be a bit of a hit to their offering, a catchy tune.
Yeah, well, no. In fact, it's got nothing to do with music per se. It's offering a new way to chat with friends via direct messages. It's a direct messaging feature buried within Spotify. So it's going to be available for folks who have free subscriptions, also premium users over the age of 16. The idea is to attract more users by encouraging them to share with friends what they're listening to, what they thought of this song or that song. Now, importantly, Spotify tried this back in 2017, didn't work, didn't catch on. But this time they hope to have a lot more success because their membership has just exploded. They have something like 700 million active monthly users. And they're trying to sort of up their offering because they're facing competition from Apple Music and from Amazon Music and from YouTube. But I should say, Marcy, that not everyone thinks Spotify getting into the messaging business is a good thing. On Reddit, some folks are saying they'd rather see the company improve its shuffle feature than worrying about offering DMs.
Oh, the shuffle feature when you hear the same tune 60 times and you're like, why? I have 300 songs.
Exactly.
What's going on in the markets this morning, Hallie?
Yeah, a bit of a mixed bag. Down in Germany, up in France, UK is up. Asia mixed as well. Oil is down slightly at $64.0, so 64 even US. Gold is up $5.70 to $3,454 US. Canadian dollar up slightly. It's at 73 cents even US.
All right, Hallie, take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
That's Hallie Cotnam with our business news, filling in for Crystal Lee Ramlakan today. Well, as I mentioned, by the end of next week, we're going to have most students in schools in Manitoba. The first day for Winnipeg is the Winnipeg's largest school division. The Winnipeg School Division is next Wednesday, in fact, for students. So we'll have all kinds of stories coming at you next week. However, we have one now that's really interesting because a lot of students might be tempted to use artificial intelligence or AI to help them with things like essay writing when they go back to school. But scientists want to know what impact the use of AI might be having on their brain function. So a recent study from MIT is getting a lot of attention because it looked at this. And Corey Funk spoke to our medical columnist about it, Dr. Raj Bhardwaj.
Good morning, Corey.
So what did these researchers look at?
Yeah, so this was a small study. It was released as a preprint earlier this summer. They took a small group of university students. They had them write an essay, the essay portion of the American SAT test. So it tests your reading comprehension and writing skills by having you read a short passage and then write an essay explaining it. So they divided 54 students into 3 groups, and they attached EEG electrodes to measure their brain activity while they wrote those essays. So one group did the essay writing without using any online tools. They were the brain-only group. Second group, they could use like search engines like Google, but no AI. And the third group could only use AI. And then 4 months later, they moved some people from the brain-only group to the AI group and vice versa to see if their brain activity would change. So during the essay writing, while they were measuring these students' brain activity, they found that the students who were in the brain-only group, not allowed to use any tools other than that, had the most brainwave activity, especially in the front part of their brain, the decision-making part. And their essays were scored as being the most creative. The Google group had pretty strong activation in their brain, but in a different part, in the visual processing and memory parts of their brain. And the group that used AI had the least brain connectivity overall, and it got worse over 3 writing sessions.
Oh, wow. So, but then what happened when the students changed groups and had to write without AI tools or got too used to AI after not being allowed to use it in the first place?
Right. So as you might expect, for the students who went from using AI to brain only, their brain activity and connectivity did increase, but not to the same levels as the students who were brain only right from the beginning. And that's interesting and maybe ominous, according to the researchers. So for the students who wrote the first 3 essays brain only and then used AI for the 4th, you would expect that their brain activity would maybe go down a bit, but it also increased. So that's kind of interesting. So it could be that, the students who wrote the first 3 essays with AI and then had to do it on their own, maybe they lost some creativity or ability to write essays as well because they had help right from the start. And if that's the case, then, people who are worried that AI might have bad effects on our ability to think and create, they might be right. But this doesn't explain why the students who switched from brain only to AI also had increased connectivity. So it's probably more nuanced than, AI saps your creativity. It might be more about the timing of when and also how you use AI in the creative process that makes a difference.
So then, on the whole, we're getting into a little bit, but what does this study tell us then in terms of AI and thinking, or at least, when it comes to writing essays?
Yeah, I mean, it's super interesting findings, right? Which is why they released them early. But even the researchers point out that more brain activity on an EEG isn't necessarily a good thing. I mean, we like to think that it means that somebody's more engaged, they're thinking harder. But it could also mean that their thinking is disorganized or inefficient or overloaded. And, so this research is telling us how much brain activity there is going on, but it doesn't really tell us what exactly is changing when people flip from the brain only to the AI group and things like that. So the other thing to think of is that there's this idea of cognitive offloading. Right? So there are tools that we use so that our brains don't have to work so hard. And we do this all the time. We've been, I do it every time I use a grocery list instead of trying to keep an entire list in my head, or using GPS on my phone instead of, driving just using my mental map. So one of the reasons that the researchers wanted to release this paper before it's been peer reviewed is because they're a little confused about these findings, and they're like, well, when people move from brain only to AI, or AI to brain only, like, what does that mean? Is this an indication of some loss of brain power in some way? And if so, then maybe people are right to be worried about AI's potential impact to our thinking.
Now, people are probably listening to this and thinking of how AI is used in their own fields, whether it's work or study. But what do you think the findings of this paper might mean for your medicine, for your field?
Yeah, so there are a lot of AI assistants out there for doctors, and there have been studies already about, how does it change what we do? And there are actually some interesting studies that show similar results to this one, but not in terms of EEG brain activity, but in terms of results for patients. So for example, there was this study that looked at gastroenterologists. So these are bowel specialists. They're doing AI-assisted colonoscopies. So they're basically running a camera by the bowel wall and having a look at the wall for little polyps and things growing on there that might be signs of early cancer. So the AI system that they were using looked at the video in real time, and if it spotted an abnormality, it highlighted it with a little green square on the video, like, boom, there's a little polyp maybe, and that would bring it to the attention of the doctor doing the scope. So after 3 months of using that system, the doctors were about 20% worse at noticing and finding polyps during, on their own. And there have been similar findings looking at radiologists who are looking at mammograms for early signs of breast cancer. So some researchers figure that maybe there's this subconscious safety net bias that our brains kind of fall into, right? When people know that there's a safety net in place, then, that maybe they're not trying as hard to catch everything because they know they can fall back on the AI safety net to catch it for them. Now, these are super early studies, just like the essay study. So there's a lot more to learn about, how our brains, how our thinking might change as we begin to offload more processing to these AI assistants.
Well, now, so given all these early findings, do you have any advice to kids returning to school or even teachers and parents who are dealing with more AI being used in the classrooms and even at home too?
There's something to be said for at least developing and practicing the skills first before offloading it. Right? If you move to a new city and you never build a mental map of the roads, you're going to be worse off than if you have developed that mental map, but then you use GPS to maybe find, a shortcut when there's bad traffic or something. Same for being able to write an essay, right? I would say that the danger is if you never develop the critical thinking skills to read and understand and integrate information, then that's not good. You're losing some creativity potentially, because when we see less activity and less connectivity on an EEG, that usually doesn't go with more creativity and more thinking. So I would say that the goal isn't just to get the right answer, right? But to learn how to get to the right answer and how to think critically and how to solve problems and learn how to solve problems. And that's how our brain circuits grow. And, we don't want to offload that, growing our brain circuit process at all.
Well, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much, Dr. Bardwaj. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
That is Dr. Raj Bardwaj in conversation there with Corey Funk. We next week are going to be hearing more about back to school. If you have an idea to pitch to us, by the way, about your life in Manitoba or what concerns you, or if you have a question for the education minister who we're going to have on, please call it in or email radio893@cbc.ca or call 788-3205. Well, next on the show, there is intense grieving in Minneapolis after the unthinkable happened yesterday morning. A shooter opening fire at a Catholic elementary school while children were sitting in church before class time. The gunfire killed 2 children and at least 17 people are injured. 14 of them are kids. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz spoke to reporters.
It's Minnesota's day today, and it's my strongest desire that no state, no community, no school ever experiences a day like this.
And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church.
That was the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey. Before that, we heard from Minnesota Governor Tim Walz speaking yesterday. Now, there have been more than 200 mass shootings in the U.S. so far this year, and each time it relaunches the conversation about gun control. David Tribman is a columnist for the Globe and Mail. He's in North Conway, New Hampshire, and here to talk about it. Good morning.
Good morning.
So to start, we've heard a little of this morning already, but can you just recap for us the latest news about the investigation here and the condition of the victims?
Well, the latest news is as sobering and horrifying as the early news. 2 dead, many more injured. The possibility of recovery, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, I'm sure, of this community are nil, actually. There's a lot of trauma in Minneapolis. It's a very difficult time.
Let's go right there then, because that's quite a statement saying the possibility of recovery are nil. But I know that, David, you led the Pulitzer-winning coverage for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette of the mass shooting in the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pennsylvania. That was 2018. What are your thoughts on how a community recovers from something like this?
Well, in short, it doesn't. Marcy, the situation in Pittsburgh, where this shooting occurred 3 blocks from my house. I walk by that every day in the usual, my usual meanderings, like doing my normal business. I didn't hear the shots that day, but I kind of hear them every time I walk by. The victims' families will never recover. The community is still in shock and trauma. There were great, valiant efforts, really, by the Pittsburgh Penguins hockey team, the Pittsburgh Steelers football team to bring the community together after all of this. Really wonderful efforts. There's other kinds of efforts underway. It's been, several years now. And there's still active work to try to soothe the community after this terrible tragedy.
So another in Minneapolis yesterday. What has the White House said?
Well, the important thing is that President Trump had a conversation with Governor Tim Walz. Now, you'll remember that Tim Walz was the running mate of Kamala Harris in the campaign to defeat Donald Trump, so that must have been a heck of a conversation, I suppose. But the president did reach out, and Tim Walz said that they had a conversation. There are no details of that. But we do know that there was a conversation. I should add that President Trump did go to the Tree of Life. It was a controversial visit, but he did go to the Tree of Life in 2018.
I mentioned, some of the numbers, but remind us how many mass shootings there have been in the U.S. Over in the bigger picture, and I mean also what are seen as what's the way forward here, because this conversation and obviously this story just keeps repeating.
This will stun you, but there have been 488 mass shootings in the United States in the first 8 months of the year. Now, let's define what a mass shooting is. A mass shooting is a shooting in which 4 or more people are killed. I guess technically this doesn't qualify as a mass shooting with just 2 deaths, although the word just or only don't really capture the magnitude of this. So gun shooting goes on, so much so that I teach a course on gun control at McGill.
What are seen then as the contributing causes in the way forward?
Well, Republicans will tell you that it's mental illness. Democrats will tell you it's the number of guns. I will tell you it's a combination of the two. It's a toxic mix, isn't it?
There are conversations about gun control every time this happens, as I mentioned, and as you mentioned. Where is the U.S. federally, and where are the states federally on that issue right now?
Here's where we are. The Republicans control and they, of course, are anti-gun control. Control the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the presidency. The Democrats don't control any of it, so there's no chance whatsoever of any gun control in the federal level. On the state level, it's different. The states such as Minnesota are fairly liberal, and I suspect that before we're done, Governor Walz will go up to St. Paul, the state capital, and will ask for more stringent gun control, and I think he might get it.
Thank you for this, David. We appreciate it.
Okay, we'll talk again on a happier day.
Yeah, I hope we do. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
David Shribman is a columnist for U.S. politics for the Globe and Mail. We reached him this morning in North Conway, New Hampshire. We will hear more reaction to yesterday and, of course, how people are grieving today in Minneapolis on World Report. That's coming up in 3 minutes here on CBC 89.3 FM. And right now, let's lean into our local headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, schools in Manitoba are making room for hundreds of wildfire evacuees who won't be home for the start of school. More than 5,500 people are still displaced. The government has been asking evacuees to register their children in local schools. Winnipeg School Division Superintendent Matt Henderson estimates up to 400 students across the province will need a place to learn. Manitoba's advocate for children and youth says there is an urgent need for emergency placements for children in care in the north. Sherry Gott says some high-needs children are being moved up to 10 times. Gott says the Families Minister should visit some of the northern communities to see the challenges they face caring for children. I'll be back for more Manitoba News, with more Manitoba News coming up at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
In the next hour or two, very different looks at housing in our community. First of all, those who have homes. We're going to look at the housing market here in Winnipeg as prices soar, and that's bucking a bit of a trend for prices. And now to the houselessness in Winnipeg. The most recent street census shows there's a record number of people in the city experiencing homelessness. We're going to hear from someone who's working on the front lines of that issue with youth in our city, so stay tuned. And then at 10 to 8, a transportation story next week. Thousands of Winnipeg students will be commuting to school on the new transit bus routes all over Winnipeg. One mom is sending her 9th grader on a bit of a bus route dry run to try and get ready for this, and we're going to talk to her about that. If you are busing this morning and you're standing out there waiting for it, it's going to be pretty good, actually. Bring a fan if you get hot easily, because our high today is going to be 28 degrees. Already at 16, there's shallow fog out there in Winnipeg. And with our humidex today, it's going to feel more like 32. We have not had problems reported yet on our morning commute, but if you need to pass something along to us, either fog spotting or something more serious, hopefully not. But you can use the commuter line and call Corey at 788-3093. I'm Marcy Marcuzzo with our team here at Information Radio, your morning show on Thursday, getting through August here. Stay tuned. World Report's coming up next at 7.
Today on The Current.
Humanitarian organizations warn that many Palestinians are too hungry to move elsewhere.
I'm Susan Bonner. The United Nations says famine has taken hold of Gaza. More than 500,000 people are facing starvation, acute malnutrition, and even death. We'll hear from Save the Children about what needs to happen now. It's coming up on The Current.
The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Heavy Russian bombardment overnight has killed at least 15 people in Kiev. Dozens more have been injured. Ukrainian officials say more than 30 missiles and nearly 600 drones targeted locations across the country. Nearly 100 buildings have been damaged. Crews in the capital are still pulling out people trapped under rubble. Briar Stewart is in Ukraine. And Briar, what more can you tell us?
Well, I'm in Kyiv, in the kind of the southeastern part of the city, and it's where a missile struck an apartment building overnight. There's a very large recovery effort underway. The missile slammed into the building and took down several of the floors. A chunk of the building is missing. It's collapsed upon itself, and you have crews trying to recover bodies at this moment. We know that several people have been killed, including children, the youngest just a toddler. And where I'm standing, you have dozens of people out, that live in this area, that are from this building, whose loved ones lived in this building, and they're watching this. It's very emotional, but there is really just a sense of disbelief that this is still continuing. We know that this was the largest attack in Kyiv in several weeks, and it's just part of what we have seen of kind of like a ramping up of aerial attacks over the summer, particularly on the capital.
How are people feeling about this ongoing violence?
Well, I think, I would say that there was not a lot of optimism for the political talks that are going on. I think people that I've been speaking with didn't have a lot of hope that they were going to lead anywhere because they said Russia will not negotiate. We cannot trust Vladimir Putin. But still, I think there was sort of a sense of relief that people were talking about it, and countries, including many countries in Europe and in Canada, were trying to, to keep it out there. And you had Donald Trump talking about it. You had Trump meeting with Putin. But the fact that you're seeing attacks like this still being carried out on this scale with this number of people being killed, it is really devastating. And people now are spending much more time in shelters. The site that I'm at, I talked to a young man who's living in the building. He said that they all went to the shelter originally, and then after the first strike, they ran out because it filled with smoke. And when they were on the street, there was a second missile strike nearby, and some of the people who left the shelter were actually injured by the shrapnel.
Thank you, Briar.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Briar Stewart in Kyiv. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is making a rare foreign trip to China next week. He will attend a military parade in Beijing. Russian President Vladimir Putin is also expected to be there. It will be the first public appearance of the two leaders alongside Chinese President Xi Jinping. It is being seen as a show of solidarity and defiance against the West. Russia has been subject to Western sanctions since it began the war in Ukraine. For nearly 2 decades, North Korea has been under United Nations Security Council sanctions over its development of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. The parade in Beijing marks the 80th anniversary of Victory Day for China and the formal surrender of Japan during the Second World War. Smoke from wildfires is undermining the health of Canadians. 2023 was the worst wildfire season ever recorded here. Now a report from the University of Chicago says it led to some of the highest particulate pollution levels in more than 25 years. As science reporter Nicole Mortellaro tells us, experts fear it's reversing progress made in achieving cleaner air.
It's hard not to remember the 2023 wildfire season when more than 16 million hectares of forest were lost and thousands were displaced from their homes. Today's report found that during the 2023 wildfire season, more than half of Canadians breathed air that surpassed our national standard. And if those levels continued for a person's lifetime, the average Canadian would lose roughly 2 years of their life expectancy. The worsening air quality is a frustrating reversal of progress made by Canada to reduce air pollution. Michael Greenstone is one of the report's authors.
What's really interesting about the reversals in Canada and the United States is they're showing that air pollution is like the zombie that we thought we had killed, but it's coming back to life.
But with climate change worsening droughts, the risk of wildfires increases, as does the risk to Canadians. Courtney Howard, an emergency room doctor in Yellowknife, said we could continue to see an increase in health effects such as asthma, pneumonia, or even cardiac arrest.
I started looking into wildfire smoke in about 2014 because we had 2.5 months of wildfire smoke in Yellowknife. And I wanted to know, just as an emergency physician, what that did to our patient population. We had a full doubling of emergency department visits due to asthma to our emergency department and a 50% increase in pneumonia.
This year has been the second worst wildfire season on record, and experts warn that the risk to Canadians from exposure to smoke will likely increase each year. Nicole Mortellaro, CBC News, Toronto.
Many students in Manitoba are still under wildfire evacuation orders. There are just days left before the new school year starts, and administrators are racing to put a plan in place to make sure all kids have a classroom to go to next week. The CBC's Santiago Arias Orozco has more from Winnipeg.
We weren't, expecting to be gone until September.
Irving Bigetti's family spent much of the summer displaced from northern Manitoba. The wildfires that forced him out have receded, but like many others, Bigetti's family won't be back home for the start of the school year.
I know all about falling behind, and I don't want my kid to fall behind.
More than 5,500 people are still evacuated in Manitoba. The government doesn't want students out of class coming the first bell next week, so parents can register them in local schools where they are evacuated. Matt Henderson is a Winnipeg School Division superintendent.
There are probably families who don't trust the school system in Winnipeg, and we want to make sure that we're doing it in a culturally responsive way.
Staff, including Indigenous knowledge keepers, are helping families. The Brandon School Division is prepared to welcome as many as 250 evacuees. They're bringing a retired school bus back and bought new chairs. Marcel Colomb First Nation children will be using those classroom spaces. Chief Delia Hart-Francois.
We've been in hotel rooms for 51 days from when we first got evacuated. They need normalcy.
Many evacuated communities are waiting for electricity to be restored. For some, that might not happen until the end of September. And with that much uncertainty, school divisions are also planning for changes along the way. Santiago Arias Orozco, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Musicians played at a candlelight vigil last night for victims of the shooting at a Minneapolis Catholic school. 2 children were killed. 17 other people were wounded when an attacker opened fire. The students were attending Mass in a nearby church to mark the start of the school year. Officials say all of those wounded are expected to recover. The FBI is investigating the attack as an anti-Catholic hate crime. Canada's top court will today weigh in on a land dispute. It involves a First Nations claims to a stretch of beachfront on the shores of Lake Huron. The claim by the Saugeen First Nation has been supported by a ruling upheld last year by Ontario's Superior Court. As Andrew Lupton tells us, the town and landowners are now asking the Supreme Court of Canada to step in.
There is some confusion and frustration.
All summer long, Jay Kirkland has fielded the same question over and over. Does Sauble Beach, the Lake Huron town that's been drawing tourists to its sandy shores for decades, even still exist?
It was just a kind of a shock to our municipality and the town of Sauble Beach when it did happen.
Kirkland is the mayor of South Bruce Peninsula, the municipality that includes the town of Sauble Beach. Over the Canada Day long weekend, the town's iconic retro-styled welcome sign was switched overnight. Instead of saying "Welcome to Sauble Beach," it now reads "Welcome to Saugeen Beach." The sudden sign swap happened after a series of court decisions. They ruled that a survey mistake made back in 1855 deprived the band of land ceded to them in a treaty with the Crown. Now property owned by the town and a handful of landowners is in limbo. The town is asking the Supreme Court of Canada to hear its appeal to reverse those decisions. Kirkland said it's to clear up confusion.
I think there's other cases that are going to pop up from this in the future.
Lawyer Nuri Frame doesn't see it that way. He's representing the First Nation. Frame says the case is about how language of a single treaty is interpreted and doesn't have wider implications for other land disputes involving First Nations.
So this is, to be very clear, not a case about Aboriginal title. It is not a land claim. It is rather a case which is about ensuring that the treaty boundaries that were expressly agreed to in 1854 are reflected on the ground.
The Supreme Court's decision on whether or not they'll hear the appeal is expected this morning. Andrew Lupton, CBC News, London, Ontario.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio live in downtown Winnipeg from our CBC studios. Thanks for joining us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Foggy and hot. That's what we have today in Winnipeg. And actually, the fog is across a lot of the province. So Abby's going to get us through that in just a moment. This hour on the show, we're going to be talking about home prices. We're going to get a look at the housing market here in Winnipeg as prices soar. We're going to hear more about what that means for buyers and for sellers, and also why we're bucking a trend nationally. In addition, this hour on the program, to something completely different and maybe the opposite of that, we're looking at people who are homeless. The most recent Winnipeg street census came out this week. Later today, we will get more detail on it, but it says there's a record number of people in our city experiencing homelessness. So these are the largest numbers in the last 10 years. We're going to hear from someone who works in the front lines of the issue with youth in the city of Winnipeg. So stay tuned for that. And I just want to mention, now we're just getting so close to back to school, right? Next week, thousands of students are going to commute to school, and some of them on transit. And that means on these new transit bus routes. Coming up just before 8 o'clock on CBC, we're going to hear from a mom who's sending her 9th grader on kind of a bus route dry run to try and get ready for this. So we're going to hear more about that. With other stories and headlines, here now is Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, back to school could look a little bit different for some students next week. The province says more than 5,500 people are still displaced by wildfires, and planning is underway to make sure students can go to a school wherever they are. Winnipeg School Division Superintendent Matt Henderson says they're working with the province to welcome students. He estimates there could be up to 400 students across the province who need a place to learn. An investigation into a Winnipeg police shooting that killed a Nigerian international student has found the officers' actions were justified. 19-year-old Afolabi Opaso died in 2023 after police responded to a call at a friend's apartment. The review found Opaso was in a mental health crisis. Use of force expert and former Vancouver police chief Cash Heed says we need new strategies for police when dealing with people in crisis. I'll be back with more on that story and others coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
We also will have more on that story coming up after 8 here on the show. Right now, though, let's get into your weather forecast. I mentioned how hot it's going to be. Abby is in with the numbers.
Yeah, before the heat comes in, we're waking up to foggy conditions, and that's stretching from the north all the way down south. Some areas already clearing, but we still have foggy conditions. So look out for wildlife if you're on the perimeter axis. That will clear to a very warm and sunny afternoon. The southern and the central areas will see highs in the upper 20s and even close to the 30s, while the northern regions still staying cool this morning, but lots of sunshine in the forecast. Winnipeg right now we're sporting 13 degrees in some areas, 15 in some areas under this shallow fog. The winds are light and calm for now. That fog patch will lift this morning. Once that does, we're expecting a sunny day, Marcy. Temperatures will be climbing to around 28. Some areas in the city might even get to 29 this afternoon. And with that humidity factored in, it will feel close to 32. So it's just light breeze coming from the south. So it's going to be more like a humid day. But the good news is we cool off to around 13 degrees later tonight. Other regions in the south, we're waking up to this 13 to 16 degrees. And up north, we're seeing 7 to 14 degrees. Also, fog patches everywhere I see on the map this morning. Winnipeg right now, it's foggy, 15 degrees, lots of sunshine on the way, and we get to 28 today.
It's like an invitation to go to the beach, right? Like if you missed it this summer, you still have a chance.
You still have a chance.
It's on the bucket list. Go to Grand. All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
You know what I'm obsessed with right now, Corey Funk?
What's that?
You and I got out to Lake Country. We were in Lac du Bonnet for some coverage there. Now, it wasn't for a good reason. It was wildfires. But while we were out there, of course, people go there for the beauty of things. One of the things I've been following now, because I have all these Lac du Bonnet connections, socially now on social media, is this cam that Tim Turner out that way has put up. He's got a big bathtub, and it's like full of water, and it's for bears and wildlife that might need help. Because people, when we were out there, people were like watching bears come out of the bush and worried about them. Yeah, and then looking for water for different things. So this went up, and I don't know if he put it up after that or if he had it up before. But this camera shows the bears, and I'm obsessed with this now.
Oh.
They're like so funny. Like they're bear butts, and they're like in there. And one bear got scared of the water, and he popped out. Like it's like watching a cartoon.
Did one bear
or something.
crawl in the bath? They gotta crawl in the bath.
They're doing it all.
Really?
Yeah, and then Mama will
cute.
come with her cubs, and everyone knows I don't really care to see a bear in person, but on camera.
I was in a car with you when we saw a bear, and it was like, Corey, get out of here.
Corey's like, look at the beautiful bear of Manitoba, and I'm like, move on, man. I'm a city kid. All right, let's get into what's happening in the not just in the city, but all over the province for the commute.
Yeah, overall, in terms of the roads, pretty quiet overall. Did get a call from Tommy on the commuter line. He said Highway 75, between Morris and Winnipeg, that fog is actually a pretty big issue. Very thick patches at times. You can't even see the car in front of you. He said that also includes, other areas south of the city, like St. Anne's Road as well. So just careful if you're hitting those roads. It might be pretty thick fog you might be going through. So heads up there. Though if you see anything else going on or don't see anything else going on because of this fog, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, if you've seen the housing market in Manitoba lately, as I alluded to, then you might have noticed some changes in the prices. So if you're selling, you're probably loving this. If you're buying, maybe not so much. In Winnipeg and all across our province, in fact, houses are becoming more expensive. So in July, we saw some of the highest monthly average prices on record. That's according to the Winnipeg Real Estate Board. The average price, in case you're curious, of a residential detached home was over $443,000. Michael Fraze is president of the Winnipeg Regional Real Estate Board and in studio live with us. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So how does this number compare? Just like 443, if that's the average price was over that, is that a lot more than previous years, or what's your sense of that number?
Yeah, it's up almost over 10%.
Okay.
Not quite, but we're hovering at double digits there. And it's even gone up since then. So right now, currently, I looked at this morning before I got up here today, and it was just over $450,000. So it has risen a little bit again. And these are record prices for Winnipeg.
And what's contributing to that? Is it because there do seem to be builds out there, but are they at a even higher price? Like, is that level of the market sort of where maybe a family would try to be getting into a house is not enough stock?
Yeah, certainly not enough stock. We've had a supply issue for a number of years, since the pandemic, and we're still have this like pandemic hangover with supply. But the difference is with us and some of the major other markets in Canada this year is they had demand fall off. Like Toronto, Vancouver had like sales plummeted this year. Now they're oversupplied and they're starting to rebound, where we've had the complete opposite effect. Our demand has remained strong. Even at the end of 2024 into 2025, we've had strong demand throughout the year. Every month has pretty much outpaced last year. So it's this demand that is outweighing the supply that's really pushing these prices upwards. What that does is it just creates a seller's market. In many local neighborhoods, we're under a month of inventory, which means there's not enough housing supply. 1 month of inventory is very low. A balanced market, buyer's market, seller's market, balanced market is usually between 3 to 5 months of inventory. And we're sitting in some neighborhoods under 1 month, which means there's just like weeks of inventory. And so that just creates a hyper-competitive market, which I know a lot of buyers, especially the first-timers looking to get in, are experiencing and have experienced this year. And that does put an upward pressure on prices.
Where are the hottest neighborhoods where you're finding that 1 month?
If you're in, neighborhoods that are close to that average sale price, so like Windsor Park, East Kildonan, Westwood, those are, Crestview, those are definitely really, really busy markets right now. And there's just far too few homes on the market in those neighborhoods.
Who's shopping? Who are the buyers in Winnipeg? Is there everybody, but
everybody,
is there who are the buyers that might be struggling to find an affordable home right now?
Well, those buyers in that entry level, that's certainly under $500,000 is the toughest market that we have right now. You do have, as you kind of go up in the price point, there's still definitely, we still see some luxury homes selling over list price with hundreds of thousands and multiple offers, even in the luxury market right now. But generally speaking, there are some pockets that are you have a little bit more room to breathe. Some areas like Sage Creek and Bridgewater, as an example, those ones have a lot of new inventory, a bit of a higher price point. So there's a bit more room to move around. It's kind of like going from a hot tub into a swimming pool. You have a bit more room. But those neighborhoods for sure as I mentioned, that are hovering around that average sale price are the busiest and the most competitive.
Why haven't we fallen off here? You were talking about other cities where there was a change and it didn't happen here.
Yeah. So Manitoba and Winnipeg, what we have is a unique economy here. So there's a number of things that are going for us which really help boon demand. The first one is, first of all, our affordability, right? Even though these are record prices, we are about half of the national average for homes. So affordability is certainly driving it. We have an economy that has grown. We've kind of withstood and been resilient through this whole tariff and uncertainty of 2025. And our unemployment rate is actually below the national average as well. So you have, and population is also increasing. So you have more people in Manitoba. Our population is growing. Low unemployment. So you have people with jobs. That is going to be with stable interest rates. That's a perfect setting for housing.
Yeah, we're just different. We've always been different, quite frankly.
We've just bucked those trends, right?
Yeah.
We just don't have those massive volatile swings that some of those other major markets do.
If sellers are out there, what do you say to them right now about this, given the market?
Yeah, first of all, don't read the national headlines, right? Those ones don't apply to us. So A seller right now is typically speaking in a good position. It is a seller's market, but every market is local, and even beyond that, it's hyper local. There's submarkets within submarkets. There's different streets. On one side of the street is different than the other side of the street, or across the tracks. So making sure you get local knowledge, making sure you get a local realtor who knows the ins and outs of that neighborhood, and with a proper pricing strategy, a seller is set up well.
July's average prices for residential detached homes and condos also continued the trend of the highest monthly average prices on record, which, condos also is a totally different part of the picture. But I should just ask you, how different is it? Or is what you're talking about is on the houses the same for condos in Winnipeg?
Yeah, condos is kind of a spillover effect almost, because with our Winnipeg is over 70-75% of our sales are residential detached. We are a single family home community, right? That's just kind of where we are, as opposed to again Toronto, which is condo.
Yep.
So what that means is, as the single family market was uber competitive, a lot of people look for alternative housing options, right? It's better to be a have than a have not almost. And so, okay, if I'm not going to get a residential home, I can go into a condo. And condos, even though we did see multiple offers in condos this year, it's fewer and far between. The intensity is died down for condos. So people can go into a condo, have a much more, less manic of a purchasing process. They have a cooling off period. You can kind of approach it a little bit differently. And we just don't have, again, the same sort of supply issues. Condos, we have new development. We have new condos coming to market. But it is... It's another good choice for people right now if they're wanting a single family.
I want to ask about first-time home buyers in more detail in a second, but I want to ask you where infill fits into this. Yeah. Because obviously we've had zoning changes now in the city of Winnipeg because they were going for these federal dollars, and so they had to change some things about how quickly things could be built. So we're now seeing more infill. Yeah. We're told by the city that we need more, we need more density and such from their point of view. So where does infill fit into this? Does it take away some of those where two, median market single family homes would be, and then in some cases, put up that multi-dwelling? And how does that affect the market trends?
Yeah, infill is a good news story here, because what it does is it offers, again, more alternative housing types for buyers, especially first-timers, because a lot of the infills now, they are looking at going with a duplex or granny suites, which is kind of a new thing for the city to start allowing more of those and easier to build them. When that just helps a first-time buyer's purchasing power if they can offset their debt servicing ratio with income from a rental suite. So it's a good news story, and more infill is needed. I apologize if this is a crass analogy, okay. But somebody equated it to somebody has to come and scrape the roadkill off the road, and so there are underdeveloped housing. There are underdeveloped neighborhoods that need an influx of cash, an influx of capital to improve them, and that's where infill housing really helps, and it is sort of revitalizing those neighborhoods. It's a good thing.
Let me ask you about the first-time home buyers. Then, what should they be thinking about if they're in Winnipeg, and especially if they've been struggling to find a place?
Yeah, certainly there are challenges out there for first-time buyers and for buyers in general, but there are some good news stories here. One, again, as we just talked about, some new alternative housing types. There are builders are even building more single-attached townhomes. And they're reacting to the need for more affordable housing. So there are more options right now for buyers that way. The other thing is, though, it's super paramount. You have to get a great team around you as a first-time buyer and any buyer. You have to get a great realtor who knows the neighborhoods that you're looking in, these submarkets I talked about. You need to get a great financial advisor and mortgage advisor as well, so they can get a financial plan. And then you have to set a plan. And from there, you can go in and attack the market. And that's the attitude I sort of recommend is a patient aggressiveness, where you want to be patient. You want to have the right house. I don't think anybody should just buy a house because they need to and they buy a dud. Like, that's not what we're after here. We want to get people in the right homes and right neighborhoods for them. But you have to be aggressive as well. So be patient for the right one, and then when you see the right one, you have to go into the market and you have to be aggressive with it in this market. You can't just haphazardly wander in and expect success.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning and walking through the trends and how our community is bucking the trend across the country. Thank you.
Thank you again for having me.
That is Michael Fraser with us live on CBC in studio, the president of the Winnipeg Regional Real Estate Board. It is now 7:25 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app and YouTube. And let's turn our attention to morning sports. Good morning, Scott Regehr.
Hey there, Marcy.
So let's start with football, where the Bombers are busy preparing for the Labor Day Classic.
They are, and they got some good news. Dalton Schoen, who's been out since week 5 with a knee injury, he was a full participant at practice yesterday, so it looks like he's going to draw in Sunday for that Labor Day Classic against the Riders. Nick Dembski, for those wondering, he was limited yesterday in practice, so we can't be quite as sure with him. So this is the first matchup against Saskatchewan this season, and could prove to be pivotal. The Bombers, after are only 2 wins back of the Riders for top spot in the West, winning this week, and the Banjo Bowl could mean a pathway to hosting a playoff game for Winnipeg, aside from the Grey Cup game, of course. Mike O'Shea, the coach, is not looking quite that far ahead.
We don't ever speak about a bunch of the stuff that's in the middle. You achieve that if you took after your daily process. I mean, I think that's the standard answer, and it's standard amongst professional coaches across the entire world because it's the truth. If you're so into outcomes and looking too far ahead, you just lose sight of what you're doing right now, right? It gets repeated because it's true.
Fair enough. Mike O'Shea. One other football note. Bombers draft pick and Canadian quarterback Taylor Elgersma was cut by the Green Bay Packers earlier this week. As of right now, Marcy, there are no indications he's going to make his way north of the border. The latest reports have Elgersma working out for the New York Giants, who don't have a very good quarterbacking situation. So we'll watch that.
Let's move to baseball. A lot of drama in the Jays game last night. I watched part of it, but I missed some of this.
Yeah, well, they were playing catch-up the whole game long, Marcy, against the Minnesota Twins, and then right near the end of it, probably when you had gone to bed maybe, they finally did catch up. Addison Barger, who's looked lost at the plate of late, hit the 2-run double in the 8th inning that turned the tide.
Just trying to get something in the middle. Honestly, I used a different bat. Like, my bat was not working, hasn't been working. So Ty France actually picked up one of my old bats from in the cage, and he randomly decided to use it. I mean, I haven't seen the bat since last year, and he had a homer with it. And I was like, oh, shoot, I'm just going to use that. And it worked, so I don't know. I mean, it has my name on it, but I guess, we'll share it or whatever.
Addison Barger's forgotten bat, the MVP last night. Honorable mention goes to Jeff Hoffman, who after blowing a save the previous evening, came right back and got one last night. Toronto has a 4-game lead in the AL East and the day off today before facing the best in the biz tomorrow. That would be the Milwaukee Brewers.
Let's finish with footy and a shocker across the pond.
Yeah, it came in the League Cup, Marcy. This is a tournament open to any club in the top 4 tiers of English soccer. Although, let's be honest, comparing the Premiership to the 4th tier is a bit like equating Devonshire cream to powdered milk. Club payrolls reflect this. Grimsby Town's players make about $5 million combined, while Man U's make $1.5 billion combined. So the pressure, to say the least, was on Brian Mbeumo as he stepped up to take a penalty kick to keep United alive.
They're going to have to score to stay in it. Listen to the noise from the Grimsby fans. Mbeumo off the crossbar! It is Blundell Park, Bedlam!
One of the great upsets, not just in English footy history, but footy history, period. Grimsby Town, at United's expense, goes through to the 3rd round of the League Cup. In summing the matchup this morning, Marcy, the Guardian called Man U a rabble, putting forth a quasi-farcical display that ended in humiliating oblivion. Wow. Now, I say this only partly, Marcy, as a supporter of Man City, United's biggest rival, but that is some very nice writing.
Yeah, right? All right, Scott. I know you have an extra long weekend. Well-deserved. Enjoy it. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds great. Talk then.
That is Scott Regier with Morning Sports. Well, coming up on the show, we are going to be talking about some of the numbers that came out this week. We'll get more today, but we got the highlights from the latest Winnipeg Street Census. It says more in-house people in our city than any time in the past decade. The report also highlighted that homelessness often begins at age 18. We are going to talk to Resource Assistance for Youth after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is 15 degrees, heading into a hot, humid day. Sunny with a high of 28 and the humidex 32. Hundreds of students in Manitoba are expected to start the school year displaced from home by wildfires. School divisions in Winnipeg and Brandon are making room for them, but a Leaf Rapids father won't register his child for now. Irvin Biggity is helping his town prepare to return home. He won't be with his family when his son goes back to school, and he is concerned for his safety.
I know all about falling behind, and I don't want my kid to fall behind. But I also don't want my kid to be in any harm or danger or, in uncertainty.
More than 5,500 people are still out of their homes. Many evacuated communities are waiting for electricity to be restored, and for some, that might not happen until the end of September. Winnipeg School Division Superintendent Matt Henderson says they are working with the province and St. James Assiniboia School Division to welcome evacuee students. He says his division plans to meet with families in person.
There are probably families who don't trust the school system in Winnipeg or are at least leery of it because it's a strange system to them, and we want to make sure that we're doing it in a culturally responsive way. Part of our strategy is to make sure that our elders, our aunties, our uncles, knowledge keepers are going to the hotels to really sit with families and to see what their needs are.
A spokesperson for the province says they're not tracking evacuees by age, so they can't say how many students are currently displaced. Henderson estimates there could be up to 400 students province-wide who need a place to learn. An investigation into a Winnipeg police shooting that killed a Nigerian international student has found the officers' actions were justified. 19-year-old Afolabi Opaso died in 2023 after police responded to a call at a friend's apartment. The review found Opaso was in a mental health crisis and ran at the officers with 2 knives before being shot. Use of force expert and former Vancouver Police Chief Cash Heed says we need new strategies for police when dealing with people in crisis.
We can't expect our police officers to be experts in dealing with this. So I don't fault the police officers on this one. I fault our policymakers for not implementing the necessary changes.
Heed says he would like to see policy changes at the provincial and local levels. Manitoba's advocate for children and youth says the need for emergency placements for children in care in the north is desperate. Sherry Gott says some high-needs children are being moved up to 10 times. Gott says the situation has not improved, even after the province's shift to keep families together.
The minister keeps talking about decolonizing the system. I don't understand what that means. Like, children can't wait for our system to decolonize. They need supports now.
Gott says Northern Child Welfare Agencies struggle with high vacancy rates for social workers. She says the government must recruit more skilled staff to help with community placements and pay them more. Gott says the Families Minister seems disconnected from the challenges Northern communities face caring for children. CBC has reached out to the minister's office for comment. The deadly school shooting in Minneapolis is renewing calls for stricter gun control laws in the U.S. Last night, a series of vigils were held to honor the victims of yesterday's attack at a Catholic school. 2 children were killed and another 17 people were wounded. Keith Ellison is the Attorney General in Minnesota.
My thoughts and what I'm thinking about is a national ban on assault rifles. My prayer is a national ban on these assault rifles. And you should know that when we used to ban them assault rifles, we used to keep a lot more people alive than we do now.
The shooting suspect has been identified as 23-year-old Robin Westman. Westman died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. You can hear the latest on this story, as well as other national and international news, coming up on World Report at 8. For the first time in 27 years, Operation Red Nose will not run in Thompson this year. There just aren't enough volunteers. Ron Jansen is president and CEO of Safety Services Manitoba, which helps coordinate Operation Red Nose. He says the decline of volunteers in Thompson at Operation Red Nose started during the pandemic.
They had around 200 volunteers prior to COVID, and last year they had 56 volunteers. So that's kind of reached a very critical level for them.
Jansen says Operation Red Nose will also not operate this year in Brandon and Shiloh. He adds ride-sharing services and more public awareness about the dangers of impaired driving are also contributing factors. You can hear the full interview coming up on CBC's Radio Noon following the 12 o'clock news. And as always, you can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
It's an interesting generational conversation, drinking and driving. Have you ever had that, Heather? Like in the younger set, it's almost like, I'm not going to say the educational campaign shouldn't continue, they should, but the need for them is different because it's already sort of just like, I would never do that if you talk to a younger person.
Yeah, right.
And then as you go up the ladder in age, you find, different things, different experiences and different attitudes. But that's at least been my anecdotal experience when I talk to people.
I agree. I think the drinking culture has really changed where people, just younger generations are not as involved.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll have to put that to our Gen Z panel, actually. That'd be a good topic to talk about. Right now it is 7:36 a.m. It's time for our regional forecast. Abby has that for us. As I mentioned off the top of the show, Abby is sporting like the coolest summer shirts. He does this every year as we get into the last week of August. As a reminder, hang on to these days,
hang on to
people.
the last days of summer.
So today you got little sailboats on your shirt. Loving
sailboat,
it.
Coconut trees,
Cute.
and the beach scene.
Perfect for what you're going to tell us.
Yeah, perfect for today, but most regions still waking up with foggy conditions. So you will still notice fog if you're outside the city. Don't panic when you spot it. That should clear as we get into the morning. Then we'll see this very warm and sunny day. I would say overall, expect sunshine with highs warming into the upper 20s, and some areas would even see low 30s across most of the regions. Winnipeg right now, 16 degrees. We're still recording shallow fog in the city. The winds are calm for now. That's what we're going to see more like a light breeze for the rest of the day. Once this foggy conditions lifts in the city, we will see lots of sunshine. Temperatures will warm to 28 degrees. It will feel like around 32, 33 with the humidity factored in. And then later in the evening, we're going to cool off to 13 degrees. In the Pembina Valley region, Modern, Winkler, Alton, and Morris, 13. Fog also recorded in that area. The winds are gentle from the west and moving northwest this morning. Expect sunshine once this foggy conditions dissipate, and you see temperatures get to 28. Brandon and Dauphin, sunshine already there. The fog cleared in that part of the province. We are hovering around 12 and 13 degrees. Similar conditions we're seeing in Gimli, 13 and sunshine right now. Most of those regions will see temperatures get close to 31 degrees with the humidity factored in. It's going to feel hotter than that. For the powerful influence surrounding areas, we're looking at temperatures around 14 degrees right now. Light winds coming from the northwest. Fog patches also from overnight still hanging around, but that should clear as you get deeper into the morning. And then by the end of that foggy conditions, you'll see sunshine taking over with a mix of clouds later. Temperatures warms up to 26. Thompson is at 8 degrees and Churchill at 7 degrees right now. Both regions enjoying sunshine and will warm close to 25 degrees for that part of the province. But Winnipeg right now, it is 16 degrees with shallow fog in the city, warming to 28.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
The commute, Corey, how's it going?
Just that fog we've been hearing about. Tommy called. He said foggy patches, pretty thick actually between Morris and Winnipeg on Highway 75 as well. Similar case on St. Anne's Road area as well. So he said he couldn't even see the car in front of him for a little while. So heads up there. Otherwise, though, been a pretty quiet commute. If you see something, though, give me a call, 204-788-3093.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Well, next on the show, the latest Winnipeg street census shows more unhoused people in our city than any time in the past decade. And Homelessness Winnipeg has released the highlights of a survey it did last fall. So last November 5th, volunteers visited encampments and all other kinds of spaces across the city to collect the data. It found more than 2,400 people were experiencing homelessness. That number is almost double the last survey done in 2022. And as past surveys show us, that number is also likely low and not capturing even more people that are out there homeless. So later today, we are expecting to hear some more details about the report. But right now, Kate Schoberg, the Director of Resource Assistance for Youth, or RAY, one of the partner organizations in the street census, is with us in studio. Good morning, Kate.
Hi, great to see you.
Good to see you too. So more unhoused people in our city, than we've seen in the past decade. What was your response when you heard that in the report?
I don't think it's a surprise to most Winnipeggers. We're seeing homelessness be very present throughout the city. I don't think there's a corner that isn't seeing really clear evidence of it. So it confirms, I think, what many of us in the sector already knew.
How does it reflect the population you work with, young people? Because one of the things in this report says that homelessness often begins at age 18.
Yeah, it really did a good job of talking about the 18 to kind of 30 age range that we mostly serve. And it also talked about entries to homelessness from CFS, from group homes, and that very, very high numbers of people, even including adults, entered homelessness as a young person.
That census number in this data said that 50% of respondents have been, as you highlighted, in the child welfare system at some point. How do we do better than this for the young people specifically?
So this isn't a new problem, and there's been work that's been happening for some time through CFS, through other projects to make things better. I know Nadinaway has been a leader in Winnipeg in terms of ensuring that 18 to 21-year-olds, 18 to 25-year-olds are well cared for. But there's still too many stories of young people, the moment they turn 18, really having nowhere to go. And we have a number of experiential staff with us as an organization who want to make sure that the people that we serve are better treated than they were when they aged out of care. And so there's a lot of passion in the city about doing right by youth.
And what have you learned from either, the folks that are, working with you that have their lived experience, and then also looking forward and thinking about how that happens and why that happens, that there's nowhere to go? Is it there are places, but the resources aren't sort of flowing through for people to understand where to go for young people specifically? Or is it because the systems themselves at exit there's a gap there in terms of how to make sure that we don't lose people at that critical point?
I think the math is mathing, so it's like all of the above. But then, we lose more units of housing, and particularly low income housing, to say fire. Like not even raises in rents, but to fire every year. Then we're building, so we're not even replacing housing at the pace that we're losing it year on year, and so that's affecting everyone. And the report also talked about just lack of funds, right? So people being kicked out of housing or being unable to achieve housing because they themselves don't have the money that they need, right? So, as at Ray, as you know, we take a holistic approach. We've got the hub model, and so we do basic needs and entries into housing and mental health work, but we also have 2 programs that are geared towards helping youth figure out how to get jobs and be comfortable in the work site and be set up to enter the job market and then be successful going forward. So we've got to be thinking about all of those pieces, because CFS for many, many kids, whether you're in a group home in a foster family, is often not a great experience, and youth don't necessarily report feeling like they're set up to be successful to enter, say, the job market in a good way going forward. So there have to be, for one thing, we've got to hold the system accountable. We've got to make sure that kids in care are being well cared for, and in the interim time, we've got to figure out what are the gap filling measures that we can make. I was looking at education stats yesterday. If you're Indigenous in Winnipeg, your chances of graduating are half of those for other students. And so there's lots of pieces to the pie that need to be improved.
You were talking about some stats. This is another one out of the report. So Indigenous people make up 79.9% of those who experienced homelessness on November 5th. I mean, that's an insane number. I'm wondering about serving populations who are houseless. It struck me a few weeks ago when the city put up their spaces that they're going to be building supportive housing to try to fill some of the physical gaps of building more affordable housing, right? They name these different sites. But then they also said in that, I'm just talking about the press release. I haven't talked to the mayor yet, but I will. But in the press release, they sort of said, they named these populations. And it sort of said, people experience addiction, people who are, it said refugees, it sort of was lumping a bunch of different populations together for who this housing could work for. And that's fine. All of the needs were present in the different populations highlighted. But I do wonder, as someone who targets a specific population with very unique needs, you're talking about job entry and skills and for young people.
Yeah.
Is that the best approach as we do build more affordable housing to mixed populations, or are the needs in those different populations so vastly different that maybe we should look at separating what types of housing is targeted for whom?
It could be, I mean, one of the kind of grounding pieces that I talk about with my staff is that trust is the currency. And so really whoever you're working with is you will have the privilege of supporting someone to move forward in whatever their goals are if you started from actually establishing a relationship of trust, right? And so, at my last job at Main Street Project, we really worked on redoing the way that we did transitional housing and incorporating lessons from, say, Dr. Martin Brokenleg and the Circle of Courage and Jesse Thistle's work on Indigenous housing and homelessness, and really looking at relationships, the importance of relationships. Caseworkers throughout the city are doing amazing work ensuring that people are getting to medical appointments, getting their groceries, these kinds of things. And at Main Street Project, we really looked at broadening the aims of working with any particular person towards the quadrants of that circle of courage. So independence, generosity, mastery, belonging, and looking to ensure that wherever we were putting someone, whether it was transitional housing or permanent housing, that they had a fuller scope of interest presence in the neighborhood where they were going towards, which really meant that we saw greater success rates because people were able to stay in their housing longer. They felt like they belonged in the place where they were going, right? So I think it's, regardless of who you're working for, that's a pretty good way of going about what you're trying to do.
In terms of where people were, I found it interesting in the report that it said that people, where people stayed the night of the count, provisionally accommodated. That was the biggest number, bigger than a shelter and unsheltered. And what does that mean? That means, according to this, friends and family.
Yeah.
Maybe couch surfing, maybe sure. Staying in a room. Is that does that ring true with youth?
Even more so. Like, and for many organizations, we assume we're working with hidden homelessness, right? So this is a count of public homelessness. The vast majority of people who are experiencing precarious housing homelessness are doing exactly what you said, right? And particularly young people, particularly women, particularly queer people who struggle to find safe places to live when you're in transition, right? And so yeah, it's important to have these numbers that are clear for a point in time, and it's only a part of the picture.
Yeah. What would you add about what we should think about moving forward for solutions out of this?
So, Winnipeggers are so compassionate, and in the same breath as us wanting to make sure that everyone's housed, we also, in the interim, need to really be upholding the human rights of people that are unhoused, the treaty rights of people that are unhoused, the ancestral rights of people that are unhoused. And so we need to make sure that we're not rushing to solve a problem so much that we're breaking trust, that we're breaking these ancestral rights as we move forward, right? So it's a fine balance, but it's really, really important that every single person be respected.
Can you give me an example of that, like rushing to solve a problem, and what you mean by that?
Yeah, so too often in the outreach work that we're doing, we hear about people living unsheltered who have experienced even violence by local homeowners who are upset with the situation, just want to see a solution, but are taking it out on the wrong party, right? So these are historic policy-based problems that have been created by policy, and it's going to take policy solutions. So we really need to be directing our energy towards folks creating policy and moving that policy forward.
It was interesting because I did a bit of a homelessness series this summer, which we're continuing. But one of the couples that I had met, he and his partner at the time, they had moved down to Wolseley. They found some space, and he didn't want to name the person, and you'll understand why. Because he shared with me, his name is Caden, and he shared with me that he at first was there, and there was somebody that was upset. And then when he started talking to this same person, this man, as he described, it was that person, once he heard Caden's full story and they got to know each other, that actually helped him move into a space now. And he had been in an encampment and wanted to move somewhere safer with his partner. And he got, connected with that path because of a person that sat and spoke with him.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Like our outreach services at Ray are a little more constrained, but MSP, of course, offers outreach throughout the city 24 hours a day. And a lot of the work that we did when I was working with that team was actually working on good neighbor conversations, right? So when there is conflict between people living unsheltered and people living sheltered, there are folks in the city who can facilitate conversations around maybe it's noise, maybe it's when smoke is happening, right? Just to to make sure that everyone's getting along in the interim while we're trying to solve homelessness. And so the MSP outreach team is really great at that work.
Kate, we'll leave it there for this morning. Thank you very much for coming in. We'll see what more we learn about the report later today.
Great.
Kate Schoberg with us live at CBC in our studios, the Director of Resource Assistance for Youth, or RAY.
If it happened today, find out today. That's the power of having the news in your hand. Get late-breaking news from reporters across the country, straight to your mobile device. Customize your experience with news from your region and what matters to you. Whether it's big headlines, detailed articles, live events, or on-demand video, CBC News has got you covered. Connect to the world. Download the free CBC News app or visit cbcnews.ca.
It's 10 to 8 right now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Coming up here after 8 o'clock, we are going to be hearing more about a story that's been in the news this morning. And that is the story of a name of a man you will know, 19-year-old Afolabi Stephen Opaso. He was shot and killed by officers, Winnipeg police officers, who responded to a well-being call. This was on December 31st, 2023, New Year's Eve. Well, the report is out, the investigation is out, rather, into that fatal police shooting. And after 8, we're going to hear more from a former police chief on the decision and where the Winnipeg Police Service goes from here. So stay tuned. We will have a big interview about that coming up after 8. Right now, shallow fog continues across the province, and we turn our attention to talking about back to school. Students all across the city head back next week, and in fact across the province by the end of the week. And many will have to adjust in Winnipeg to more than new classes and teachers from day one. For thousands of students who ride city buses, navigating new Winnipeg transit bus routes and schedules is also going to be part of a new challenge this fall. So earlier this summer, the city overhauled, as you know, many routes and also changed some bus stops. Katie Anderson is our next guest. She's mom of a 9th grader, and starting next week, her 14-year-old son is going to be commuting by city bus from his home in St. Boniface to his new school in Windsor Park. So she says she's getting ready for the transition, and she's going to tell us how. Good morning.
Good morning.
So tell me a little bit about how you and your son have been prepping for this in a very real way.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, talking about it, of course, just like anticipating the big change that's coming. My son, of course, is excited about this because it's a chance, like this is a step towards independence, right? This is him getting a chance to do things without his parents around. So he's excited. He thinks this is great. The biggest thing that we've been doing really is actually connecting with all the other kids in the neighborhood who are going to be doing the same commute. So there's a group of them that are going to be taking the bus together to sort of help problem solve and learn as they go. So no one's on their own as they're figuring out this new chapter.
Super smart. So how many are in that group?
Oh gosh, I think they're up to 5 or 6 by now. And of course, I'm sure that changes every day depending on which sport someone's playing or someone not being there that day. But yeah, there's 5 or 6 of them. And we actually sent them on a test run the other day. And they made it there and they made it back all by themselves.
So this is like a low pressure dry run on the city route so that they're ready for the actual first day.
Exactly, yeah. And so I guess we started that we all got them together and had a look at the app on their phones to make sure they understood how to look up that information and how to read the maps, just what information was available to them, and then sent them on their way. They went on their own. And they did the things that you expect they would do. That one friend was like, no, we should take this other bus. It's the other route. Let's take the other number. And they got on the wrong bus and they ended up late. But it was great because there was no pressure. There was no timeline. They didn't have to be there on time. So they had time to walk between the bus stops and figure it out and, make it back safe.
So this was on Tuesday, I understand. What does his daily commute look like then? How many buses does it involve?
We are lucky where we are. For us, it's going to be a single bus. So it's a bit more walking, but they're 14, so they can walk. We just have one bus that goes from the neighborhood straight into Windsor Park. So it's for us, we're lucky. It's not complicated. I do have friends in other divisions and other schools that are, because of the change, are switching from one bus to 2 or 3. So I appreciate that other people are going through a different transition than we are.
Yeah, for sure. You said a bit more of a walk. Where is that more of a walk? Is the bus stop further now? Do you have a new bus stop or?
No, it's just more of a walk than it's one bus, but it's still 14 minutes of walking and for 22 minutes on the bus. So it's, between the two ends, there's a little bit more walking. The stops maybe are a little bit farther for us. This is hard. See, we didn't take the bus last year, so this is all new for us. We're not comparing to the old system.
Yeah. What did your son think of the experience? You said in the end they got back, it worked out, but what did he share with you?
Oh, they felt great. Of course, there's the funniness of one friend getting it wrong, which is always a good little bonding experience. But he felt really proud of himself, actually. They felt good about having done it, and they came back, and it was kind of like no big deal. I said, were you glad that you had the extra time? He's like, yeah, I was glad I wasn't worried about being late, so it's good. But now I know for next week where to get off and where to get on, all that kind of stuff.
And how did you feel about it, him taking public transportation alone for the first time in this way for this purpose?
Great. I feel happy for him, actually. But of course, those mom nervousness bits are pretty much taken care of by the fact that they're with a bunch of friends. So I think moving through this transition from, more parent involvement to eventually much less is nice to be doing that with a peer group that we trust, and they have each other. So that feels really good.
You mentioned sports. So I'm curious if your son has sports or, other extracurriculars after school, whether or not that's all going to be transit supported as well, and how you might move forward through that.
Yeah, actually, I think because we've had we're so far having a positive experience and my son's interested in it, we've been talking about, because he does play sports, we've talked about the idea that there may be, on those days where it's a really tight fit between what's happening at school, the extracurricular at school, and then his after-school sport, which is across the city at Pan Am Pool, that maybe there's actually room for us to not be doing as much chauffeuring and for him to be taking a transfer and actually going across from school straight to the pool. We haven't done that yet, but because this has gone, he's been feeling good about this part, I think that there's a good chance that it may reduce some of our shuttling too.
How are you feeling about that? Every parent's like, oh, what do you mean?
Yeah.
A break from shuttling, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like, okay, well, maybe I could drive only once to the pool to pick him up at the end instead of going back and forth twice in an evening. And then, also his brother goes places in between. So,
right.
For sure, there could be some relief. I'm not in a hurry. Of course, it's a farther route and it's, later in the evening, all these other factors that sort of are part of it. But it's nice to be getting to that place where we feel like we have more options with the kids. Yeah.
You're close. You usually hear it when they get their driver's licenses, right? This is a different thing. Do you have any concerns? Obviously, about your son taking public transportation when you think about him just being on the bus, and you mentioned later hours, maybe potentially. And if you do have concerns, have you thought about safety measures? Are there things that you've had conversations with him about there?
Yeah, I think the conversations have been around there are realities out there that are we can't protect them from forever. And I don't say that flippantly. I just mean that we know that there's lots going on and there's other social issues taking place that are happening and interacting on the bus. So we've had conversations about the kinds of things he might encounter, but really it's about what are all the other safe resources that he can look to for help. So of course, a bus driver or getting off and going to a store or looking to other passengers on the bus for help. And of course, whether we like it or not, cell phones are involved now. Like kids have the ability to phone us and ask for help if they need to get off and ask for a ride. Understanding that there could be situations where you're like, it's not good to be on the bus anymore. We need to get off. As nervous as that makes me feel, I do feel like it's kind of a part of becoming more independent and learning to just navigate the place you live, and your community is a wide place, and there's lots of different people who are participating out there in the world that you're a part of. So learning to be a part of it, and then learning to get help where you need help.
Thank you.
Maybe isn't your parents. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us this morning, and enjoy the first day back when it comes next week. Thank you very much for sharing your family's experience.
Yeah, thanks, Marcia.
That is Katie Anderson with us, local mom of two. Her son will commute to high school on city buses for the first time next week and this fall. Heather Wells, what do you know about headlines?
Well, hundreds of students in Manitoba are expected to start the school year displaced from home by wildfires. Winnipeg School Division Superintendent Matt Henderson says his division plans to meet with families in person, wanting to offer education in a culturally respective way. For the first time in 27 years, Operation Red Nose will not run in Thompson this year. There just aren't enough volunteers. Red Nose will also not operate this year in Brandon and Shiloh. More news at 8:30.
Taché and St. Mary's and Kenny and St. Mary's, some traffic issues.
Today on Q.
The Canadian musician Melanie Fiona rose to stardom in the early 2000s because of her powerful voice. Then she lost her voice, literally and figuratively. After a decade-long break from music, Melanie will be here to tell you why she's back.
No more fighting. Q with Tom Power. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Susan Bonner. The United Nations says famine has taken hold of Gaza. More than 500,000 people are facing starvation, acute malnutrition, and even death. We'll hear from Save the Children about what needs to happen now. That's coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Smoke from wildfires is undermining the health of Canadians. 2023 was the worst wildfire season ever recorded here. Now, a report from the University of Chicago says it led to some of the highest particulate pollution levels in more than 25 years. As science reporter Nicole Mortellaro tells us, experts fear it is reversing progress made in achieving cleaner air.
It's hard not to remember the 2023 wildfire season when more than 16 million hectares of forest were lost and thousands were displaced from their homes. Today's report found that during the 2023 wildfire season, more than half of Canadians breathed air that surpassed our national standard. And if those levels continued for a person's lifetime, the average Canadian would lose roughly 2 years of their life expectancy. The worsening air quality is a frustrating reversal of progress made by Canada to reduce air pollution. Michael Greenstone is one of the report's authors.
What's really interesting about the reversals in Canada and the United States is they're showing that air pollution is like the zombie that we thought we had killed, but it's coming back to life.
But with climate change worsening droughts, the risk of wildfires increases, as does the risk to Canadians. Courtney Howard, an emergency room doctor in Yellowknife, said we could continue to see an increase in health effects such as asthma, pneumonia, or even cardiac arrest.
I started looking into wildfire smoke in about 2014 because we had 2.5 months of wildfire smoke in Yellowknife. And I wanted to know, just as an emergency physician, what that did to our patient population. We had a full doubling of emergency department visits due to asthma to our emergency department and a 50% increase in pneumonia.
This year has been the second worst wildfire season on record, and experts warn that the risk to Canadians from exposure to smoke will likely increase each year. Nicole Mortellaro, CBC News, Toronto.
A heavy Russian bombardment overnight has killed at least 17 people in Kiev, including 4 children. Dozens more have been injured. Ukrainian officials say the capital was targeted with more than 30 missiles and nearly 600 drones. Briar Stewart has more from Kiev.
One by one, rescue crews carry away the dead on stretchers from a 5-story apartment building in Kyiv. A Russian missile slammed into it in the middle of the night, causing several floors to collapse.
It was like several rocket attacks.
Andrei Luty lived in the building and told CBC News that he and others ran to the shelter when they started to hear explosions. 1 minute after he reached it, the missile struck the building. When the shelter filled with smoke, he said some residents ran out to the street, but then a second missile hit a few dozen meters away.
I was so shocked, but I very happy my mind tell me the right stuff what to do. It's like adrenaline stuff, I don't know.
Officials say 20 districts were hit in the city in the overnight attack. The president of the European Council said an office in Kyiv that belongs to the EU delegation to Ukraine was damaged in a deliberate Russian strike. Images showed the inside of the building strewn with ceiling tiles and other debris. This was the largest attack in the capital since the end of July, and the deadliest one involving civilians since U.S. President Donald Trump met with Russia's president for a summit earlier this month. Today, Ukraine's leader Volodymyr Zelensky said that Vladimir Putin is choosing ballistic missiles rather than the negotiating table. And he said several deadlines and dozens of opportunities for diplomacy have already been wasted. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Kyiv.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is traveling to Japan and China, looking to build closer diplomatic ties. New Delhi is battling escalating tariffs from U.S. President Donald Trump. Additional tariffs of up to 50% on Indian exports went into effect yesterday. Modi visits Japan first. That country reached a broad tariff deal with the U.S. last month. But the details of a key investment package offered by Tokyo are still unclear. Modi then travels to China. He is expected to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin for two-way talks. Putin plans to be in Beijing to attend a military parade. The White House says it has fired the director of the Centers for Disease Control. Suzanne Menares served as the CDC's top leader for less than a month, but after a confrontation with the U.S. Health Secretary and an attempt to remove her, Menares refused to resign. As Steve Futterman tells us, her dismissal could add more chaos to the public health agency.
The sudden move to dismiss Susan Menares comes after a clash over vaccine policy with controversial Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Kennedy has been seen by many as a vaccine denier. The White House says Menares isn't aligned with the Trump agenda. Her lawyers counter, saying she is being targeted for standing up to science.
What you saw at the CDC was a wholesale destruction of the leadership of the organization.
Dr. Ashish Jha was the COVID-19 response coordinator during the Biden administration. Along with the attempt to remove Menares, 4 other high-ranking CDC officials resigned late Wednesday, one of them accusing the Trump administration of weaponizing public health. Dr. Jha agrees.
It is an extraordinary moment, and as I said, one that leaves our country very vulnerable to biological threats.
More criticism came from California Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna.
The entire scientific community is outraged by this. She's just standing up for that, and she's being fired. I mean, you have an administration that basically has made a habit of rejecting all forms of knowledge and expertise.
All this comes as the Kennedy-influenced Food and Drug Administration announced on Wednesday restrictive guidelines on who is eligible to get the latest COVID-19 vaccines this fall. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
Musicians played a candlelight vigil last night for victims of the shooting at a Minneapolis Catholic school. 2 children were killed and 17 other people were wounded when an attacker opened fire. The students were attending Mass in a nearby church to mark the start of the school year. Officials say all of those wounded are expected to recover. The FBI is investigating the attack as an anti-Catholic hate crime. 7 deportees from the U.S. are now in Rwanda, part of an agreement between the United States and the East African country. Non-citizens are being sent to Rwanda and other countries. This is part of U.S. President Donald Trump's mass deportation plan. Rwanda is one of 4 African countries that has reached agreements with Washington. The others are Uganda, Eswatini, and South Sudan. No information was provided about the identities of the deportees sent to Rwanda. Officials there say some have expressed the desire to stay, while others want to return to their home countries. Canada's top court will today weigh in on a standing land dispute. It involves a First Nations claims to a stretch of beachfront on the shores of Lake Huron. The claim by the Saugeen First Nation has been supported by a ruling upheld last year by Ontario's Superior Court. As Andrew Lupton tells us, the town and landowners are now asking the Supreme Court of Canada to step in.
There is some confusion and frustration.
All summer long, Jay Kirkland has fielded the same question over and over. Does Sauble Beach, the Lake Huron town that's been drawing tourists to its sandy shores for decades, even still exist?
It was just a kind of a shock to our municipality and the town of Sauble Beach when it did happen.
Kirkland is the mayor of South Bruce Peninsula, the municipality that includes the town of Sauble Beach. Over the Canada Day long weekend, the town's iconic retro-styled welcome sign was switched overnight. Instead of saying "Welcome to Sauble Beach," it now reads "Welcome to Saugeen Beach." The sudden sign swap happened after a series of court decisions. They ruled that a survey mistake made back in 1855 deprived the band of land ceded to them in a treaty with the Crown. Now property owned by the town and a handful of landowners is in limbo. The town is asking the Supreme Court of Canada to hear its appeal to reverse those decisions. Kirkland said it's to clear up confusion.
I think there's other cases that are going to pop up from this in the future.
Lawyer Nuri Frame doesn't see it that way. He's representing the First Nation. Frame says the case is about how language of a single treaty is interpreted and doesn't have wider implications for other land disputes involving First Nations.
So this is, to be very clear, not a case about Aboriginal title. It is not a land claim. It is rather a case which is about ensuring that the treaty boundaries that were expressly agreed to in 1854 are reflected on the ground.
The Supreme Court's decision on whether or not they'll hear the appeal is expected this morning. Andrew Lupton, CBC News, London, Ontario.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
A hot day, and we have fog issues affecting a lot of the highways, especially between Morris, we understand, and Winnipeg today. Thanks for joining us on Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team at CBC. This is your morning show on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. This half hour on the show, a 60 Scoop survivor returned back to Manitoba for the first time in 48 years. CBC was there catching the emotional reunion between mother and son yesterday. We're going to hear about it this half hour. Also this half hour on Information Radio, we have a comprehensive interview about a report that has come out that you might have heard about in the news this morning. We're going to hear from a former police chief about why he says the approach to use of force should be different. Now, this after a police watchdog cleared the officer who killed a 19-year-old international student here in Winnipeg in 2023. This is the investigation findings into the fatal police shooting of Afolabi Stephen Opaso. So we will look at reaction to that report coming up this half hour. Right now, let's go to news headlines with Heather Wells. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, back to school could look a little different for some students next week. The province says more than 5,500 people are still displaced by wildfires. Planning is underway to make sure students have a school where they are. Winnipeg School Division Superintendent Matt Henderson says they're working with the province and St. James Assiniboia School Division to welcome the students. Manitoba's advocate for children and youth says there is an urgent need for emergency placements for children in care in the north. Sherry Gott says some high-needs children are being moved up to 10 times. Gott says the Families Minister should visit some of the northern communities to see the challenges they face caring for children. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Abby, how's the weather today?
Yeah, most of the region still are spotting foggy conditions. That should clear, and then we'll see a very warm and sunny day, respecting sunshine and that comfortable summer warmth throughout the province. Right now, Winnipeg, 16 degrees. The shallow fog still present. We're seeing light winds now coming from the east. The fog will lift, and we'll see this sunshine really take over into the rest of the morning. We'll see highs get to 28 degrees. Most of the southern regions seeing 15 degrees at this time, and up north we're seeing 10 to 15. And warming up close to 30 degrees everywhere. It's check this morning. But Winnipeg right now is 16, heading to 28.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Corey, what's up in the commute?
Yeah, a few things to keep an eye out for. Heard from Chris about two issues on southbound St. Mary's. So the first one at Taché, there is a car in the median lane. Looks like it got some kind of collision. It's been waiting to get towed, so that's blocking the median lane there, and that's causing some pretty big backups there. As well, southbound St. Mary's at Kenny, there was a car in Semi that got in a collision, and they are blocking the curb lane. Not as big backups there, says Chris, but you want to keep left to get around that. Also got a call from Neil about a bunch of fire trucks blocking northbound Balmoral entirely. Just before Sargent. So if you're going down Balmoral northbound, you won't be able to go that way. There's fire trucks blocking that. Fog may still very well be an issue on Highway 75 between Morris and Winnipeg. Heard from Tommy earlier about fog patches as well. St. Anne's, just kind of that whole kind of area just south of the perimeter there. Look out for that. But if you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
8:13 is the time right now, and let's get into this story that happened and unfolded yesterday afternoon. The sound of drums was heard through Richardson International Airport in Winnipeg. His family was waiting for a very special reunion, a reunion 48 years in the making. Jonathan Hooker was only 2 months old when he was taken from his birth mother, Patsy George, as part of the 60s scoop, and he ended up moving all the way to New Zealand with his adopted family. It was only after DNA testing that led him to his family that he discovered the enormity of his adoption. CBC Manitoba was there for the emotional reunion yesterday at our airport between mother and son.
I'm happy to see my son. I thought I would never see him again. He was only 2 months old when they took him away from me. And my other daughter, a month old. I don't know what they were doing. But I'm happy to see him, and I was kind of scared. Because I didn't know what he was look like. Because I seen him when he was only 2 months old. I couldn't believe it when he climbed down from the stairs.
I guess dealing with it emotionally, I guess is probably the hardest part. It's not only what I've had to deal with, my family's had to deal with. I know the other families that lost their children to the 60s scoop, that was definitely pretty heartbreaking. So, and to know that I was part of that. Like you always see stories on the news and that, you go, oh, it doesn't bother me or affect me or relate to me, but this is actually dear to my heart. And so hopefully somebody else, again, will see this and hopefully maybe start looking for their family, or it'll give them some clues to reach out and help. Through my adopted parents, they were always pretty open about things. I always knew that I was adopted. I guess up until a couple of years ago, I didn't really fully understand how it all played out. They were all pretty sugar-coated the whole lot. I didn't understand it. I didn't know anything about the 60s scoop until probably about 5 years ago, and then I've only really, in the last year or so, I've really learned actually how it all played out and how the RCMP were involved and all that sort of stuff. Like I say, I didn't know because I lived on the other side of the world and the news from Canada is very limited. I was lucky, I guess, with my adopted parents. They gave me enough information and they sort of filled in a few of the spots. But the last 5 years, I guess, it's really started to happen. I've sort of made more of an effort to find my way home.
So that was live at the airport yesterday. CBC Manitoba was there for this reunion between Jonathan Hooker, who you heard there, and his mother, Patsy George. It was a reunion, as mentioned, 48 years in the making. Now, for the next couple of weeks, the family will spend time together. They have shared with us. They will reconnect after being separated for so long. And if you want to read some more details about the story, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Jarrett Martineau hosts Reclaimed.
In an hour, you could hear everything from powwow music to like a soft acoustic ballad to an electronic record to like a dub track, all in the same hour from an Indigenous artist from any part of the world. Eclecticism is an overused word, obviously, but I think the sheer diversity that gets represented on the show is something that's totally unique.
Reclaimed with Jarrett Martineau. Available now on CBC Listen.
8:17 is the time now, and let's build on a story that's been in our news this morning here. A decision has been reached over whether Winnipeg police officers were justified in the fatal shooting of a Nigerian international student in Winnipeg. 19-year-old Afolabi Stephen Opaso was shot dead by officers who were responding to a well-being call. This was New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2023. Police say when they arrived on scene, Opaso was armed with 2 knives. In January 2024, the Independent Investigation Unit of Manitoba turned the investigation over to the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team. The Alberta Police Watchdog was the one that released its decision yesterday. In the decision, multiple witnesses say Opaso was experiencing what appeared to be a mental health crisis. His roommates called police who arrived a short time later. The witness officer said Opaso ran at another officer while holding 2 knives. That officer fatally shot him 3 times. The officer who killed Opaso exercised their right to not be interviewed or share their notes during the investigation. The acting executive director of Alberta's police watchdog concluded, quote, "There are no reasonable grounds to believe that the subject officer committed an offense," unquote. Cash Heat is former chief of the West Vancouver Police Department and former Solicitor General in British Columbia. He's familiar with this case, and he is with us to talk about this from a bigger picture point of view. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what stood out for you, details about the report regarding police behavior on the scene?
Well, let's look at what they had to deal with. They had to deal with how police are trained and have to respond to these types of incidents. And I think that, at the end of the day, the officer was protecting themselves from grievous bodily injury or death as a result of their action. So when you take that into account and the fact that they're trained to respond to people that are armed in these circumstances, you can understand why they reached the conclusion. Where I'm coming from on this is initially when the information came in that this individual was dealing with a crisis because of this mental condition, whether that type of response was required immediately at that point. Were people in danger? Was the individual going to harm himself or whatever? And I think that's what we have to look at in responding to it. So I'm not going to criticize the police officers with respect to this. What I do want to criticize is how we develop policy and training to respond to these crises, because the crises are increasing. This scenario has been played out several times over the last couple of decades here in Canada, and it continues to be played out. We continue to be responding based on our default training and policies. We need to change that aspect of it.
Now, while I appreciate that you want to focus on the response, I do want to ask you a couple of things that we learned out of the report, if I may. I said in the introduction, the officer who killed Opaso declined to be interviewed by investigators or provide notes, as is his right. What would you say to someone who thinks that that's a change that should be made, that subject officers should be compelled to be interviewed?
Well, absolutely, they should be. We've gone through that here in British Columbia, where in fact the officers that were involved in a fatality did not want to even be interviewed or provide their duty notes as required. I have a different opinion on that. I give them the fact that they're public service people. They should be required to provide their duty notes with respect to this, and if they want to be interviewed, they can be interviewed. But this refusal to cooperate with the investigators is not the approach that I find is appropriate given our police services that are operating across the country.
Why would an officer not want to be interviewed?
Well, there's various things. They are entitled, and they do get legal counsel right at the outset, and usually legal counsel will advise them and not to at that, based on my experience in dealing with these types of situations where police officers are involved in. And the other part of it, even if the ones that do cooperate, usually their statement is well scrutinized by their legal counsel before it's even forwarded to the investigators with respect to what has occurred here.
One of the other details I wanted to ask you about is the witness officer who did speak to the investigators told investigators that she tried to draw her taser, but then Opaso, made a run at her partner, and then the shots were fired. Who shot him, rather, to be clear, not the witness officer shooting. How important is that of a detail to what happened? Trying to get the taser, and when you think about response.
Well, it's a very dynamic situation, and I've been involved in these dynamic situations where an individual all of a sudden responds in a fashion where you have to escalate the use of force. And in her mind, based on what you've told me, she was looking for a less lethal option with respect to that, and that's how they're trained. It's a progression of force. But again, putting themselves in the situation where they had to utilize lethal force is the problem to begin with at the outset. Now, as I say, it's very dynamic, and the officers are certainly want to go home at the end of their shift, and they have a right to. And that's why we got to the point that we did, and that's why we got to the point where ACERT has said the use of force was reasonable given the circumstances on that. But again, if we don't change the policy with respect to this, or look at other ways to respond to these, and having this at the pinnacle of the response, fine. But you don't want to go to that high escalation at the outset if there is an opportunity to deal with this in a different fashion.
How do you identify if there is an opportunity to deal with this in a different fashion before you're on scene? What facts do you look for, or circumstances do you lean into that would dictate a different response?
Well, there's a couple things. There seems to be, in this particular case, from what I've read, there was a considerable amount of information coming in from the roommates with regard to this individual's behavior at the time, and the fact that he was armed at that particular time. So you have an opportunity while you're responding to this to gather that information. I think part of that information that would be obtained, I would hope, is whether individuals are in immediate danger as a result of this individual, or is he, for example, in a room by himself with these particular knives. So your approach to the situation may be different at that point. Now, if in fact he was holding a knife to someone's throat or something like that, or had the ability to harm someone immediately because of his behavior, you can understand you would go to a higher level of force immediately and get the officers in. But again, there may be an opportunity. I don't want to second guess in the minds of the officers at the time, but there may have been an opportunity to look at this in a bit of a different fashion. However, if you don't train your officers to be aware of that, if you don't change the policies with respect to that, we're going to continue to have these unfortunate and tragic incidents. And it's not going to only affect the family of the individual that lost his life. This will sit with the police officers for the rest of their lives also.
There were, you talked about the calls that led up to the police, arriving on scene. We also learn in the report or hear in the report that officers entered the apartment with their guns drawn. What do you make of that detail?
Well, again, they're trained to respond like that. And this is part of the problem. Like, not everyone's going to agree with my approach here. I don't think we should go to that high level if there's an opportunity to do something else. Like, I woke up this morning to racist and hate emails as a result of the story that was played out in the media. But I've been through this before, because there's a certain culture within policing and within society that want us to take that aggressive approach right at the outset, and especially when we're dealing with minority people. So this is a problem with society right now, and there is a problem with our policymakers with respect to dealing with this. We seem to be having this political approach to how we want to deal with these situations versus realistically what should be done to ensure that the officers go home safe at the end of their shift, and that we're saving people's lives, not taking people's lives.
Racist and hate emails because your position on this is that there should be changes to how responses happen?
Absolutely, and this is not the first time this has happened, and it kind of motivates me to be more an advocate for change in policing because of this. So, again, I have been steadfast in my position on how we reform policing across Canada, and some of the reasons why we need to reform it, because the 1970s way of the professional model of policing with the level of force is not acceptable now, especially when we're dealing with a different era and how people are reacting, and the fact that we have so many people that are experiencing mental health crisis out there right now.
What's the way forward for the Winnipeg Police Service should they be pursuing? And, the new chief has talked, at great length about trying to pursue, community relationships, and also trying to look at the issues that would rebuild trust between the population and with the community. So when responding to something like this, for example, a well-being call, which is initially what it was, and then more detail, of course, and knives involved. But where does the service go from here? You said training a couple of times, but training in what? And who else should be responding to support that training?
Well, I think we have to broaden how we approach this and broaden how we train our police officers because of the crisis that they're dealing with at the time. I think we have to take more approaches to de-escalation of these and possibly have other people respond with us when we're dealing with this. I'm not saying we have a completely social response to it. There is a role for the police to play in these particular incidents, but there's a role for others to play. For example, mental health workers that we have with riding around with police officers. We've had very successful interventions as a result of that here in British Columbia, and especially in the Vancouver area over the years. And I think we have to broaden that approach to bring in other people to deal with it. The police are the default service, but they're not the ultimate service in dealing with it. And we have a problem right now with trying to change our police services. So the chief has an opportunity to change the service, because if he does not change it, I'm not sure our politicians have the wherewithal to actually change it too. So it's got to be driven by these police leaders to make those appropriate changes to gain the credibility within their communities that they serve each and every day. And I think our police officers will benefit because of that style of leadership.
Just as a last question, there were two other roommates in the apartment. They were in one of the bedrooms when, El Paso was in there and police responded. You had highlighted in the middle of our interview that had he been in there alone, you might view this differently.
Yes, absolutely. If they're in a segregated part, and again, it's I'm not going to second guess these officers, but the appropriate response from my expertise is if they were in a separate room, if we could remove them from the suite, you have an opportunity with Mr. Apaso just there by himself to start to negotiate and start to work with him, bring in the other people.
I thought you meant had the other people been out of the apartment, but even you're saying if they were segregated in a bedroom, as the report says they were, that to you is also an opportunity to work with the person outside by themselves.
Absolutely. There's several opportunities that can be garnished from this in hindsight. But again, we've got to make sure that initially we have these practices in place so we can deal with it, whether it's removing the two individuals from the apartment, so Mr. Apaso is in the apartment alone, or even segregated in a separate room.
Kashid, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Kashid, former chief of the West Vancouver Police Department, former Solicitor General in British Columbia. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:31, it is sunny, 16 degrees right now in Winnipeg. Still feeling that August heat even as the month is winding down. A high today of 28, humidex 32. Schools in Manitoba are making room for hundreds of evacuees who won't be home for the start of school. More than 5,500 people are still displaced by wildfires across the province. The government has been asking evacuees to register their children in local schools. Around 80 students from Marcel Colombe First Nation need a place to learn. Chief Delia Hart-Francois says they need to go back into the school routine.
It would be in the best interest of the students of Marcel Colombe that they enter the school system instead of being taught in hotel rooms. We've been in hotel rooms for 51 days from when we first got evacuated. They need normalcy.
The chief is confident most students will be in class next week. The Brandon School Division says it's prepared to welcome as many as 250 evacuees. Winnipeg School Division Superintendent Matt Henderson says they are working with the province and St. James Assiniboia School Division to welcome student evacuees. He says his division plans to meet with families in person.
There are probably families who don't trust the school system in Winnipeg or are at least leery of it because it's a strange system to them, and we want to make sure that we're doing it in a culturally responsive way. You know, part of our strategy is to make sure that our elders, our aunties, our uncles, knowledge keepers are going to the hotels to really sit with families and to see what their needs are.
A spokesperson for the province says they're not tracking evacuees by age, so they can't say how many students are currently displaced. Henderson estimates there could be up to 400 students province-wide who need a place to learn. Manitoba's Advocate for Children and Youth says there is an urgent need for emergency placements for children in care in the north. Sherry Gott says some high-needs children are being moved up to 10 times. Gott says the situation hasn't improved even after the province's shift to decolonize the child welfare system.
There needs to be placements in the communities. You know, the minister continues to say that children need to stay with their families. That's fine, but let's resource the communities that need them.
Gott says it is a revolving door of frustrated social workers in the north. She says they need to be paid more. Gott says the government should recruit more skilled staff to help with community placements. She says the families minister should visit some of the northern communities to see the challenges they face caring for children. CBC has reached out to the minister's office for comment. Honoring victims of a deadly school shooting. Multiple vigils were held in Minneapolis last night. 2 children, aged 8 and 10, were killed at a Catholic school. Another 17 people were wounded. And the governor there, we're speaking, saying that they want to see something done about the nation's gun laws. Peggy Flanagan is the lieutenant governor of Minnesota.
God weeps. Jesus weeps in this moment because we have free will and we have been given all of the tools necessary to stop this violence against our children.
Investigators say the shooter was 23-year-old Robin Westman. Westman died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Well, for just the first time in 27 years, Operation Red Nose will not run in Thompson this year. There just aren't enough volunteers. Ron Jansen is president and CEO of Safety Services Manitoba. It helps coordinate Operation Red Nose. Jansen says the decline in Thompson at Operation Red Nose started during the pandemic.
They had around 200 volunteers prior to COVID. And last year they had 56 volunteers, so that's kind of reached a very critical level for them.
Jansen says Operation Red Nose will also not operate this year in Brandon and Shiloh. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That is Heather Wells, as well as Megan Ketcherson, Aaron Broman, all in our news center this morning. Thanks to Abby Adiyemi, as well as Corey Funk and Azika Abdelatif on our live crew. Associate producers with items in the show today: Chidi Akuma, Sierra Sanders, Jenna Dosso, and Sid Sundance Horshig. Corey, issues in the commute as we get off the air here.
Yes, so now northbound St. Mary's at Taché, there's a car and emergency vehicles blocking the curb lane, and then southbound at Kenny, there's a car and a semi blocking the curb lane as well.
All right, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
And Abby, the rest of the details on this hot day.
Foggy starts, clearing to very warm and sunny day across the province. The southern regions will see 25 to 28 degrees, while the northern regions will get close to that also.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Well, take care. Be well, Manitoba. Thank you so much for listening to Information Radio this morning right here on CBC or watching us on YouTube. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and The Current is coming up next. Stay with us.